Good morning. Welcome into Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. What's up, DB?
Hi.
How are you this morning?
I'm good.
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Is Shohei Ohtani going to go 50-50?
Probably.
How many games your Dodgers have left?
9, I think.
And he's 2 of each?
Yeah. Let me get you the exact total. I mean, that's not the first thing I thought you'd ask me, but I am fairly bright, so.
It just seemed like something you might know because you're like, you kind of have.
What is 90 plus 82?
172. That's too many.
What is 90 plus 62? 152?
152. They got 10 left?
Yep.
10 games to get 2 homers and 2 steals.
Yes. He will do it.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Why did he start running so much this year?
Because he's not pitching. He has a little more juice in the tank.
Okay. I thought that might be it, but I wasn't sure.
He can be aggressive.
Yeah, because he hadn't gone more than mid-20s.
Yeah, and I also think he enjoys sliding with oven mitts. I mean, if I had to be like 100% on what?
Like with his little claws?
Yes.
His little lobster claws?
I think he gets big, gigantic bases and oven mitts. Who wouldn't want to just run their brains out?
I was just curious.
He's no Bobby Witt Jr. going 30-30 back-to-back seasons for the old Royales.
You know that 50-50 is more than 30-30, right?
I do.
You just don't like Ohtani.
So can I be full disclosure?
Yeah.
I've tried to explain this to you, but I feel like you're not really listening.
That wouldn't be the first time.
I don't dislike Shohei.
Okay.
I don't like what comes with having that type of international superstar on your team.
Okay.
See, because do you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a lot of extra stuff. I remember I was part of the Daisuke Matsuzaka
and I think he's masking a lot of our issues because we have our attention on the wrong thing. Like, this isn't a super fundamentally sound team.
Well, pitching's been an issue all year because of the injuries and stuff, right?
Yeah, they do some weird things like on the base paths, and I think this is a big postseason for Dave Roberts.
I do love Dave Roberts, but not as a manager.
Yeah, you like him as the guy that can pinch run and help you win World Series.
100%.
That's not anything remotely what I'm interested in.
No, it doesn't help you. It doesn't help you at all.
Doesn't help me a gosh darn.
20 years ago, big fan.
It was pretty good.
Big fan.
But I have a question, though.
Okay.
Not that you've probably been paying attention to schedules.
Almost certainly haven't been.
Are the Braves going to make the postseason?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Are the Atlanta Braves going to? Now, the Mets still have, I believe, 5 or 6 with the Phillies, so it's going to be tough.
Going to be close.
But they're legitimately 2 back with 10 to play.
Yeah, they're in some danger.
Now, I'm telling you, though, the Mets, they're going to have to play well.
Yeah.
Because they have the tougher schedule.
Well, and the Phillies don't really need it, though, right?
Okay. I have another question.
Okay.
If you're the Phillies, do you want the 1 seed and potentially have to see the Diamondbacks?
Well,
do you think the Phillies have Diamondbacks PTSD?
Maybe. Or are you like, hey, let me go get those guys?
Yeah, I don't know. See, the Diamondbacks.
Low-key in the second half been playing really well.
No, they're fantastic.
Yeah.
And they play in a way. I wouldn't say they play small ball, but
it's kind of unusual for today's game.
I could see them bothering the Phillies.
Is it one of those games that, or one of those?
But here's the deal.
Styles that
I definitely don't want the T-backs.
Yeah. Is it one of those styles that translates better to the postseason, maybe in the regular season even?
Arizona?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Because you kind of condense everything.
Big fundamentals.
Things get a little tighter.
And plus, like, which Aaron Nola are you getting for the Phillies?
Yeah, I don't think they know.
Sometimes he's really good.
Sometimes.
But that's about –
sometimes.
There's about 2 out of every 5 starts where you're like, yeah, I don't know.
Well, and that's – especially in the postseason, you're not going to get time to kind of work through it.
Yep, there is no Cyndi Lauper.
No. Time after time?
Yes. You fall and she ain't catching you. There'll be no winds waiting. Time after time. By the way, good morning, Coach Roy. You're going to be on Get Up or on Sportsmanlike.
Ooh.
One of those shows this morning.
Well,
at 9:30 Eastern.
That's probably Get Up then. Unsportsmanlike, I think, is over by then.
I don't know the difference between the two because they overlap talents.
Oh, do they?
Sometimes.
Well, Greeny hosts Get Up, right? That's his property, I think.
I have no idea.
Okay.
I'm working. Why would you ask me?
I mean, me too, but
and you don't ever give me volume in here. I'm fortunate to even just get ESPN on here sometimes with you.
Well, it would be challenging to have volume while we're trying to do an audio-based show. That might be a little tough for people.
I detect
and for us.
I detect no sarcasm.
That's not something that I do.
So I think he's on at 8:30.
That'll be fun. Let's get Coach Rule some national attention. Let's do it.
So he's getting a ton.
I like it.
I thought about this, but I didn't feel like talking to him about it. You think he has to adjust to the national attention?
Yeah, I think so.
Because he wasn't getting it at Temple and Baylor. Now, even at the NFL at the highest level,
Carolina's still pretty far down on the totem pole in terms of national attention.
Correct.
Yeah. Like that's not – I mean – if you get national attention in Carolina, it's for a bad reason for the most part.
Correct.
Like we're seeing right now with Bryce Young and that whole situation. Which I know I've mentioned this in passing before.
Shane, have you seen The Breakfast Club?
I have.
I need to make sure that my sweatshirt, my egglets, these are egglets, right? The little things on the end.
I don't know.
I need to make sure my drawstrings are even.
So you're doing the Emilio Estevez thing?
Yes. How do they look?
The one on the right's a little shorter. No, it's too long.
Okay. All right.
I feel like this is a like an OCD moment we're having here live on the air.
You are looking live. No, so I think he has to kind of manage that a little bit. Is that weird?
No, I think it's different for him for sure.
I'm trying to eat my microphone. Is that better?
That does sound better, yeah. I don't
want it to touch my lips. I have no idea what other weirdos have used.
No, I understand. I try if it like touches my beard at all, it freaks me out. I gotta pull that thing away.
It's mildly disgusting.
Yeah, it's not great. I don't love it.
So I because it's in the middle of the schedule, and I know he wanted to kind of stay on schedule, even though they're a week early or a day early. But I do know they got in a good chunk of kind of install game plan work on Sunday.
Yeah.
So I was going to take Knucklehead to eat, but he was not free.
He was busy.
Not free.
You're Ty Robinson. He was there all day.
Not free. Ty Robinson is very interesting. I'm glad you brought him up. When we left Indy and we were making the 8-mile trek to our parking spot.
Yeah.
And I kind of talked about he came across as a guy. I'm like, is Ty Robinson a good teammate, or is he not that committed to being dominant with his playing time? Because he was very gracious about sharing his role.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, that's less reps for me. That means I can stay fresh. That's this, that's that. And I'm like, God, I remember in the moment I was pretty captivated. I was like, oh, that's cool. I don't know if I would want like 7 less carries.
Yeah.
But I do admire people that can think like that. Turns out he knew what he was talking about all along, because he's
been dominant,
better than he's ever been.
Yeah, he's been a game wrecker. Like he's been crazy good.
So that's interesting. They put this dude in a 6. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So he's just
split way out wide.
He's outside of the tackle.
Yeah.
To rush the passer to an open side. So no tight ends.
320
So they
pounds.
like put him in like what we would call drive or.
Yeah. He lined up like he was Prince Will.
Yeah.
Basically.
To get after the passer.
Yeah. At 320 pounds.
That's pretty good.
That's close. What he's weighing? 320.
It's pretty.
He's a monster. He's been so much better than I even I thought he was gonna be good.
Yeah.
I didn't know this was in there.
Full disclosure.
Yeah.
Even I'm wearing my T-shirt today.
Nice.
See my X's?
X's?
Do you see an O?
Yeah, I need some O's. Where are we at?
I can't pull it down that far. I'll choke myself.
Yeah, don't tear your hoodie.
No, I fixed my drawstrings. I'm good.
Okay.
I didn't really know. I'm the guy that quietly thought, man, if one of these two isn't careful, Van Poppel could be starting by the end of the season.
Yeah, you said that. You said that.
So
And I personally thought it was going to be Nash that made the leap because of the weight loss. I thought he's going to be more, and he's been good.
Yeah.
That's been good. But Ty's been dominant.
Ty's been so good. We don't talk about Nash. Nash has been plenty good.
Yeah. Yeah, this is not an indictment on Nash at all. Ty's just been that good.
Because we haven't got the like big heavy rundowns where
Nash can dominate.
You will get that this week.
100%.
Although I'm telling you, this is dumb. I mean, it's not dumb, but like you have to be kind of a nerd. I get it with how Illinois wants to run the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a big back.
Yeah.
But he does not run behind his pads like Edwards and
I would say he
Hickson.
does less so than the UNI backs.
Yeah.
The UNI backs are really good at falling forward.
Those guys
using
run
their body
behind their. People are like, "Oh, what's wrong with Nebraska's tackling?" I'm like, "Listen, man, that's hard to simulate."
Because let's go back 2 weeks, right? What do you remember? If you remember this, I'll be really impressed. Do you remember one specific play I brought up in Colorado as being impressed with?
Yeah, the open field tackle on the tight end by Mario Buford.
How much did that guy weigh?
He was 260.
How much?
250.
How much did the running backs weigh last week?
Almost 250.
So if I'm impressed with one open field tackle on a guy that size, that would kind of lead you to believe it's normal to struggle.
Do I win like a pack of Jolly Ranchers for?
No, that was super impressive. I'm very proud of you.
Thank you. Even though it's Marquise Buford and not Mario, I get my Bufords. Here comes Buford.
It's all right. I get my shavers mixed up too, and
Okay,
one of them hasn't been relevant for 50 years.
So you know the difference even in that analogy.
Mm-hmm.
See that he caught that tight end going lateral.
Yeah, left or right. So if we're impressed,
you're catching these backs going downhill. And I look at it occasionally. I have this disorder where I fall back into offense, even though I've been defense now for 100 years.
Yeah.
As a running back, that's what those guys were supposed to do. You want to make it hard on tacklers. Yeah. We had just gotten so spoiled where it's like, okay, hey, 1-on-1, get them to the ground.
Yeah.
It doesn't as a back, that's the worst thing you want. If that was happening to our backs, we'd be pissed.
Well, and you'd probably get pulled, right?
Yeah, we'd be like, oh my God, you let him get to his legs in the open field. That guy sucks.
Like you can't.
But when it's our guys, it's hey,
why didn't you tackle him?
Make
why
that
didn't you get him to the ground? Why did you let him fall forward?
And I'm not excusing missed tackles,
right?
But
there's a difference between missed tackles and the extra yardage.
Nebraska gave up more yards after contact than they had given up in its totality all year.
Yeah, the first two games combined.
So
because it was like 160 in the first two and 180 against UNI.
So they have to get. They do have to get better. And I was talking about it with Stripey during the broadcast. There's too much leaky yardage.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're kind of a grip, strip, slow down team, you better make sure that the first guy that gets there is securing first. Yeah. Then you can get to the
you got to get the vice grip
get the next guy in to strip and all of that stuff. Because I mean they are really good at getting kind of that philosophy, but you got to stop progress first. So I just think he does not run, but he's a big boy, but he doesn't run big.
I can see that.
So I'll be curious to see how Nebraska makes that adjustment.
Who's like a more famous example of that for people for like a frame of reference?
Like a big back?
Like a big back that doesn't run big. That maybe like to dance a little too much.
So it's not a dancing thing. They're just not a heavy runner.
Okay. So it's like a big boxer that doesn't have heavy hands.
This is weird.
Okay.
But I think of like a Lorenzo White.
Okay. Going back a little bit.
Yeah.
Is that Oilers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a got to square this guy up.
Right. Big guy, but not scary.
Right. This guy in a similar era that was kind of just the opposite. It was a guy like Rodney Hampton. Hampton got behind his pads.
Ran heavy.
Yeah. Same size guys.
Right.
Just kind of a different style.
I want to go back to Ty for a second.
Okay.
Because that mentality.
Did it start from asking me how I was doing this morning?
Yeah, we got to Shohei at some point. I don't know how or why. Because I like the 50-50 thing. I think it's interesting. But
this might be the worst concoction ever created. This is absolutely trash.
What do we got today? Cherry limeade?
So we have some leftover Spark. I'm tasting a little salt. I wanted bubbles, but I didn't want to open my can yet. So I used club soda.
That's a mistake.
Yeah, it's not good.
It's all right.
I mean, it's not even
in the neighborhood of good. Take two. Let's try again.
No, we're fortunate that that didn't come back up. Wowzer.
I wanted to ask you about Ty, that mentality you're talking about with Ty, because I think there's a point where you're good enough, and I don't know if this is the case for him or not.
This is OCD. I'm seeing how I can get these bubbles without it overflowing.
Yeah.
Is that not childish?
Yeah, I mean, it's the being competitive with yourself thing.
I was using my left hand, so I wanted to see if I could do it.
Yeah, you're definitely going to have to drink some of that down before you put the lid back on, though.
Maybe. Let it settle.
Yeah, you're going to have a problem there.
Yeah, well.
But when you're good enough, it kind of gives you, and I don't know if this is Ty, if this is what's happening with Ty or not, but when you're good enough, it kind of gives you some latitude to give up some things and not feel insecure.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
no, that's a good point. Yeah.
We saw this, and this is like kind of the most extreme example, but we saw this with Steph Curry when Kevin Durant came to town. Like, Steph Curry was like, we heard Klay Thompson. He's like, I'm not giving up bleep. Steph Curry's like, no, we're cool. He gave up shots per game. He gave up chances at more MVPs. He gave up however many points per game so that Kevin Durant could come in and thrive.
You know who was really good at that?
Who?
Really good at that. He was a great, he was really good at this. But you talk about, man, that's how Lawrence was.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that would have been my thought in that room. Who would have been like that?
He was really good at that. He was so secure. He's like, oh, man, throw him a bone. I mean, he didn't say that,
no,
like
but
we were scrubs.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, man, you get yours too.
Yeah. And then he can see the benefit of, I'm fresh all the time.
Yeah.
So good luck when I'm fresh.
When he was playing. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Well, like, good luck when I'm fresh. Have fun.
That's how he looked at it. Because he practiced so hard.
Because that's how Ty sounds. Or that's how he sounded in Indy.
Well, and what did Coach Rule say about the way that he practices? He comes to practice every day. I talk about that a ton. It almost like that ad nauseum thing where with our guys where you just want the game to be downhill.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people, they understand it and they grasp it until like you're in it.
Yeah, it's
like
philosophically
it was extremely hot and we're in full pads and offense went first and then we've got to do defensive individual, then Skelly, then team, and it's 5:05. You've been out there for an hour 40 and it's like, can I think?
Yeah.
Can I function? Can we hit this substitution pattern? This is a big quarterback. You're going to have to get him to the ground. You're going to have to play when you're we think we like the idea of it.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, let's train for a heavyweight fight, man. Let's train. And then it's like you get into those later rounds and it's like, yeah, this doesn't feel great.
Yeah, here's the problem with trying to take teams into deep waters is you got to be comfortable.
You got to, yep. And that's kind of
like that's hard. Like you have to go through some stuff that is not fun.
Yeah, that's why I liked
to be good there.
That's why I liked what Sat said. Like hey, Shane, you know the clip that you played from Sat in the open? Listen to how, number one, I think, and I'm okay with it. I really am. I do think he's talking to us a little bit because the questions center around staying on the gas and how you want to play. So listen closely to how he resets the culture, but then talks about he's basically intimating we'll be able to take what we want. Now, that remains to be seen whether that's the case.
Yeah.
But he's clearly telling you how he thinks. Shane?
We're going to be, and we can be aggressive whenever it's needed. The ultimate offensive coordinators, most of the time we want yardage. I really don't care about stats and things of that nature. We just want to win the game. We take pride in being physical in the fourth quarter. Like,
there's one.
We have certain goals we try to achieve as an offense and a defense in the fourth quarter of football games because that's where the game is won. That's where you put people away. So we'll never stray. Never stray away from that. But if there's ever a time for us to have to be aggressive all the way through the fourth quarter, we 100% will be able to do that.
Do you know how much wiggle room you have in 100%?
Zero.
So if that's his mindset, I do believe that's like outcomes have to be intentional, right? You just don't fall into using words and terms like that. You have to practice that way. So, I 100% believe that they practice with that mindset in mind.
So I think some people hear when people say 100% or whatever and hear it as just sort of a thing people say. right?
That's okay. Yeah, I can understand.
Like
that.
I could see how
I understand what you're saying.
that comment could come off as people as like,
And you get the little side eye and like,
Yeah.
100%.
it's like 100%. It's like, nah, he feels good about it. He's confident, but whatever, right?
So I think it's not that they'll do it 100% of the time. It's
There's 100% confidence that they can do it.
right.
Yeah. And there's a difference there, obviously, right? You don't do anything in football 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Somebody said something on social media that I very much understood. And this whole comments thing it was way out of control. Like this whole week, it's been a lot of notifications, which is fine. That's part of social media.
Mhm.
But he said, and I'm paraphrasing, he said, I've been here too many times over the last 20 years where we think things that we see in the non-con
Mhm.
will get shored up during conference play.
Yeah. We ignored problems in the non-con.
I'm like, you know what?
That's fair.
That's fair. That is
Totally fair.
100% fair.
I also think, though, at the same time, because two things can be true, I also think because of that PTSD, sometimes we see problems where there's not.
That's the
other side of that
That's
coin.
the 100. So that's how I feel.
Yeah.
Like I don't see to this point,
Mhm.
I haven't seen play calling as a problem.
Yeah. Haven't seen wide receiver play as a problem.
Yeah. So no, special teams is different.
Yeah. Special teams has not been great. And they know it, and they've admitted that.
But I'm not going to chase ghosts either.
Yeah.
So
Not going to find problems where there's not any.
I'm willing to see what happens. All I can go by is like the context clues of what I hear.
Mhm.
And apparently after listening to this, the phenomenon of how they want to operate in the second halves and how they want to play to win close games, I don't have to guess.
Mhm.
Like they're telling me this is how they want to play. Now I get to sit back and say, okay, they were telling me the truth or they weren't.
Yeah. Or we were right that this is a problem.
Yeah.
Or
however, yeah.
they were right that they had it handled.
Yeah.
Right? We don't know yet, but I do think both of those things can be true at the same time until we find out.
100%.
It's a little Schrodinger's football situation here. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We'll be back to set up the lineup here on Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, where you can join us on Friday to be part of our live breakfast. That's a game day breakfast.
You are looking live. Hey, a little bit of a cheaper way to tailgate early too.
That's true. Get your pregame started. You can have some cocktails while you're here. If you're just taking the whole day off and doing a whole Nebraska day, start it with us. Go to eventbrite.com.
I would too, except we got to do this whole show thing.
Yeah, we do have to do a show. Search Hurrdat Sports Radio to reserve your spot. Presented by EP Foundation Repair. Coming up on the show today, we got Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7. Kev at 8 o'clock. Kevin Sjuts from 1011 News in Lincoln at 8:30. And Cynthia Frelund from the NFL Network at 8:45 to talk a little NFL.
I was trying to get my buddy to call Jernigan.
Oh, about the Cypress Hill concert?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're with the Omaha Symphony, which seems like a weird matchup.
So I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But
You just knew he was going to Cypress Hill concert?
Yeah, because yes. And we all went out to go watch the freshman game. And he's like, oh, I got to get going. Where are you going? I'm going to watch Cypress Hill. And it figures. I mean, it's journey. But anyway. So when you said you wondered about the symphony, and I was like
yeah, because you were wondering how
I was like the verb, like bittersweet symphony.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean symphony?
Yeah, like the Omaha Symphony.
So I texted him. I was like, man, I got to know how that went down.
Because you were wondering about how Lady was out, and I was like, well, they're with the Symphony.
I said I better check on
make sure
Journey to make sure he's still alive.
I was like, they're with the Symphony. It probably wasn't too crazy.
Yeah, that didn't make any sense to me.
I have.
And he had just texted me too, so I was like, oh, speak of the devil.
I went and saw Ben Folds with the Symphony, but that makes a little more sense. He's kind of more musical.
Are you making that up?
No.
Okay, so we have a Ben on our team.
Yeah.
I constantly refer to him as Ben Folds. And they asked me, I'm dead serious. And he asked me about it.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, it's just like, because I like to see you fold guys up, right?
Yeah.
And I told Coach Williams, I was like, man, It's a group, this, that, and the other. And then you just dropped.
Yeah. I was a big Ben Folds fan. Me and my brother both were.
Is it Ben Folds 5 or just Folds?
So both. Ben Folds 5 was when he was with a group. Ben Folds was when he was solo.
Okay.
So same guy, similar music, just he had a group for a while.
I'm going to officially tell that you said Ben Folds today on the show.
Yeah.
You had no idea.
I didn't at all. I'm a big Ben Folds fan, though. And he made sense with the symphony, though, because of the style of music that he was. Cypress Hill made less sense. Let's get to Jesse. He may have been. Jesse, were you at the concert?
I was at the concert.
Okay, so how did that work with the symphony in Cypress Hill?
Okay, first, full disclosure. Let me get this out of the way. Jesse, this is why you don't stereotype. I have not once in my life looked at Jesse, who I've seen 1,000 times, and thought, you know what?
Cypress Hill guy.
That's the guy that likes Cypress Hill. What in the world, Jesse?
It was actually it was a good time. So they put the symphony on the stage, and then they've got like 2 drum sets in the front, and the conductor comes out, the symphony's out there, and then Cypress Hill comes out, and they all got suits on, and
what?
They just start doing their thing. And if you really think about Cypress Hill music, it's all basically unplugged. Like,
Yeah. They were, yeah.
Yeah, so you've got your drums, which is most of it, and then, I mean, you got your stand-up bass playing the bass, and it sounded great. I'll tell you this right now, and I told my wife and the other couple we were with, they could take this thing to Vegas and just absolutely crush. They would sell out for 6 months straight. It was a really good show. It was very chill. You know what? You wouldn't believe it. I think people might have been smoking drugs there. It was
no way.
And
I mean, insane to the membrane, like they're notorious.
I mean, their website literally pops up with a leaf next to it.
So it was cool. They played. They started right out. They said we're gonna play the whole Black Sunday album front to back. They did, and then they finished with like their other 3 songs that everybody knows. So really great show. They said they're gonna probably do it more and probably come back here next year and do it again. And if you are curious, you can go on YouTube. They did it in July in London with the London Philharmonic or whatever, and then they did it last year in Denver. And so they've done it a couple of times, but I think it's going to be a more regular thing that they do. And I would highly recommend it to anybody.
All right, Jesse, might write that down on my bingo card.
I appreciate that, Jesse.
That is incredible.
No problem, guys.
Thanks for educating us.
The last time I saw Jesse, which was just a couple of weeks ago, he was taking his mom to lunch at Paisans. Guy's my witness.
I take my mom to lunch all the time.
Just
you don't think I'd go to Cypress Hill?
Little nice Jesse with his mom just grabbing some lunch. Man, my man is like, I was at Cypress Hill.
I think people may have been smoking drugs.
Incredible. So do you just like turn a blind nose to that?
I think you must. Unless you cease, because what's usually the charge, right? Possession. So if you're not,
what do I look like? Elliot Stabler?
I mean,
how would I know?
You know, friends in law enforcement. I
have lots of those guys.
See, that's what you know.
A couple gals.
Couple gals as well.
Yes.
I think typically.
I forgot. Sorry, Mom. I'm not supposed to say gals.
Is gals not okay anymore?
I don't know. I can't remember what her rationale was. I think she said it sounds too old. I don't know. I have to ask her. I don't want to put words in her mouth.
All right.
She gets mad when I do that.
We'll figure it out later.
You make me sound so. And then it's like, didn't mean to go into character there either.
But usually it's like a possession issue. So if you don't see them with it on them, then, I think it's kind of like, well.
I mean, not to get back into the whole roll down the window thing, but don't you get in trouble for smelling it?
I think you can suspect for smelling it, but you don't actually get in trouble until you're possessing it.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think. I don't know.
Then you'd say what the kids say. It's my parents. I'm borrowing my mom's car.
I would just be like, I was just at the Cypress Hill concert. It's secondhand. I didn't do anything. I'm clean, officer.
All right. Well, my man Jesse has some range.
I think the other problem is now, since you've got all those like Delta 8 shops and stuff around, which are legal, that smells pretty similar.
Yeah.
So
So
you'd be
they're
really hard to distinguish.
Wait, Delta 8 is illegal?
No, Delta 8 is legal.
Oh, okay. I
So-
misunderstood.
Yeah, no, it's legal. So like, and it
Don't
smells,
they have 9s now? And other
yeah,
things?
Delta 8, Delta 9, like that's all legal because it's derivatives of a different part of the plant.
It's pretty scary, but go ahead. Keep educating.
But that smells almost identical. And so I've been told. But so if you,
I don't know what I've been. Delish.
well done, Shane. So if there's a legal version of that smells almost identical.
So
So it'd
what-
be really hard to distinguish.
So what about the symphony guys? Are they just like Toki Smurf too?
I mean, they are musicians, you know.
I don't want to,
I don't want to paint with a broad brush,
but
here,
I feel like I kind of am.
yeah, maybe.
Why do I think of symphony people as like, well, actually people?
I could see that. They're a little more buttoned up, but I think you're underestimating how many actually people enjoy recreation.
Okay. The more you know.
You know, that's my guess.
Oh, Jesse.
I'm just saying, with the legal version, it'd be hard to distinguish between the legal and illegal if you're just going by smell. So I think you kind of have to just default.
I got some crazy friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. My man said his stuff has covers from here to Lincoln. That would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've never actually seen him partake, but it would make a lot of sense.
I mean, you can kind of.
By the way, I think Temples of Boom is a better album
Well,
than
how do you?
Black Sunday.
Are you a Cypress Hill guy
I like
too?
Cypress Hill.
I used to be too.
You're not a Skull and Bones guy.
I used to be a big Cypress Hill guy.
Yeah.
But that was like high school.
I'm mostly just like the hits. You know, I'm not going to pretend like I've ever like done a deep dive on their discography.
I just liked the fact that I felt like they were kind of grimy for a hip hop group.
kind of grimy. How?
Like grunge.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I had never seen that before.
Yeah.
You know, like they had the matted hair and kind of looked unkempt. They made Post Malone look normal.
That's hard to do.
No, I'm serious.
That is hard to do. Coming up, we'll wrap up hour number one. We'll probably talk about something other than Cypress Hill at some point.
It's Jesse's fault.
It is Jesse's fault.
We should have asked him about Notre Dame.
We do appreciate him giving us some clarification on the symphony there because I think we were all confused. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio. Wrapping up hour number one here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage.
That was really good.
You like your little Tony White there?
Yeah, because it's just funny. Like these are real conversations. And even at that level, these are stuff we think we just do.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we were just talking about this on Monday. It's like, hey, let's get back to simplifying. We're trying to do too much. That's on us. We got to do that. And it's just, I think I gravitate towards it because it's really how coaching goes.
Mm-hmm.
It's, you have to be evaluating and asking yourself, man, are we playing to our strengths? And I like the ownership, right? There's no running from that. That's
on the DC right there.
That's totally on me.
There's a thing that I always gravitate towards that it sounds like you're talking about with Tony White there, and it's self-awareness, right? He's aware enough to be like, hey, yeah, maybe that's not what maybe I overcomplicated things a little bit. Like let's reel that back, right? And he probably did it for a good reason, right? He probably thought they could handle it. He probably wasn't just doing it for the sake of being like, hey, look at my big brain and look how smart I am. He was probably like, hey, I think these guys can handle this and we can execute it at the high level. But to be able to say, hey, maybe we're not quite there yet and reel it back a little bit, let's get back to basics. I think it's really hard for coaches to do that sometimes.
Yeah, it really is. And I think, number one, you got to make yourself a little vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And but in the same vein, you have to be so secure that, you get follow-up.
Mm-hmm. Well, hey, why'd you do that then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the natural
question.
question.
Then that opens up a whole nother can. So shoot, man, I kind of like that. And I think I just hear the clues, and I haven't heard enough from the offensive guys. And somebody asked me yesterday, I don't know if it was Dennis or not.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody asked me if I felt like the potential concerns, and concerns is maybe not the right word. The dialogue surrounding the offense is because it's in such stark contrast to what we see from the defense.
I saw. Yeah, that was on Twitter. I think.
Is that fair?
I think I saw that. I think it is fair.
Hey man, fix my battery thing.
What's your battery thing?
I thought you plugged this in the right one.
You have it had plugged in the whole time. My battery's working. You not charging?
I am now.
Okay.
I had to tighten the cord. You're like, focus. No, I am.
You look at it in like, okay, this side of the ball is executing at a super high level. And then you go and say, why isn't that the case on the other side of the ball? And you go, okay. And I think it's not just the gameplay, but I think we do it with the coordinators too. We go, okay, Tony White came in year one, great defense, top 20 in scoring, whatever, the whole thing. And you're like, well, how come Marcus Satterfield wasn't able to do that?
Yeah.
So I do think there is a contrast there, but I also think you have to understand how different those situations are. Like, just look at the single digit numbers. All but one of those guys is on defense. How many 6-year guys or fifth and 6th year guys do you have out there?
Yeah.
It's a super experienced group that was really talented that just couldn't totally get their stuff together.
So the thing about it is,
and that doesn't make the coaching job by Tony White any less impressive.
Yeah.
But he's working with different tools.
Yeah. And now they started at the same time, so this isn't a perfect analogy, but you're bringing in guys, you're inheriting guys that didn't early on fit your scheme.
Mm-hmm.
So you had to be a little malleable with the 3-3-5 to play to their strengths in year one. Now you get to do all the gaming.
But didn't we see exactly that with the offense too? Like, Satterfield had to play to Harburg's strengths.
Yeah.
That's not how he wanted to play offense.
But we just didn't give him the same grace.
Right. Because the results weren't as successful.
Right.
But
right.
the people on that side of the ball weren't as good at what they.
And the funny thing about this, I remember asking Coach Rule, and he didn't side with me. I think he went with, I don't know if it was you or Andrew at the time. Unfortunately, I think it was you, because I wouldn't have minded if Andrew was right. But you said, I asked about which one was easier to play sooner.
Mm-hmm.
And Coach Rule said defense was harder. And I was bummed. I was like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
And he's like, yes, it is. It's really hard to play good defense. Knock it off. I was like, yeah, I don't know.
I think that was me, because we were having that conversation about why can't you just be Iowa?
Yes.
That's where it came from.
Yes.
And I was like, it's really freaking hard to be Iowa.
And I'm like, no, it's not. I still don't believe that. And as I'm watching this unfold, I'm watching how the defenses, even in the NFL, have kind of caught up with offensive schemes. Now, the offense is going to have to go through another adaptation, and all the rules favor
the offense.
Yeah.
I mean, mine basically comes down to it's harder to be reactive than proactive.
But you can do the dictating. Like my man X's and O's just sent me that clip from and I love the Twitter account just because he does it's at Huskers East Nebraska, but X's and O's sent me the clip.
Mm-hmm.
And he understands football. He's like, hey, is this going from this to this? And I was like, yeah, it is. Good on you. Like, exactly. Nebraska shows a look where they look like they're in too high. But right before pre-snap, the corner kind of bails and the safety comes down. So then at the snap of the ball, everybody gets a third. One corner has a third. They go from 2 to 1. So the one safety has hash to hash. The other corner has the other third. So they obviously got in cover 3, right? So Giff comes down into the box pre-snap humming. Like he's going to be responsible for inside run T-gap. He's the downhill runner. I think you and I felt like, ooh, the flats is going to be here because they're not showing a flat defender pre-snap.
Yeah.
And Bullock almost picked that thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like that was perfect clinic tape on pre-snap disguising. It's one of the things I used to always fawn over with Michigan. I'm like, yeah, they have good players, but their pre-snap stuff, what they were doing to Washington,
You just never know what they're going to do.
was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, fudge, man. Penix has got his hands full. It ain't just throwing against Will Johnson and them guys. It's,
he's having a hard time seeing what they're doing.
This pre-snap stuff is pretty good. So that's the thing now with Nebraska that they can do. It's what we talked to Giff about in Indy. Okay, these guys have tape on you.
Yeah.
But clearly you have a few more cards you can play.
Yeah, and we've talked about that all offseason, basically, whether it's been with Giff, whether it's been with, I think Ty talked about it a little bit too, and we've heard Tony White talk about it, is what we saw last year was just the scaffolding, right? It was just the framing of the defense. We haven't seen, they haven't hung drywall yet. They haven't put any paint on the walls yet.
Yeah.
We just saw the structure. Now we've got this opportunity to see them actually build the rest of the house out.
Actually.
And that would be, and that's where you get those wrinkles, right? That's where you get the disguising pre-snap and getting confusing quarterbacks to make them think, hey, we're going to make you think we're giving you this. Kind of like with the pick six on Tommy Hill. We're going to take away that inside slant with John Bullock, right? Tommy Hill's going to play off of that guy. He wasn't playing press coverage on that.
Yeah, because that's not typically a route you want to drive onto the field.
No, but he knew, okay.
I don't know if that makes sense. It's football, whatever.
He knew that John Bullock's taking away the slant so he can bait Shedeur Sanders into making that really, that's like a 40-yard throw.
Yeah. You drive on you drive on that and miss.
Then he's house call.
He's out the back door.
Yeah, it's gone, right? But he knew, hey, Bullock's going to take this away. Shedeur's going to throw late to the sideline.
And did you see the safety rotate late over the top?
Mm-hmm. To help in case he missed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
those are the wrinkles that we're talking about where, okay, let's actually finally build the house rather than just have this structure.
And the first couple against UTEP in week one worked.
Yeah.
Similar concept. You're like, well, why is this guy open trailing, with that little inside route? Colorado tried to use it with their third receiver a couple times later in the game because Nebraska was kind of willing to concede some of those hash throws inside.
Yeah.
Because that's not really how Colorado wanted to play.
No.
It's what they were forced to
take. What we get. It's what Nebraska gave them.
Yeah, and he's right. My buddy, he sends a message. He's like, we did give Sat grace. Problem is he handpicked his quarterback, which was Sims, which I still think we were. Go ahead, because
I don't know if that's true.
Why?
Well, okay, there was nothing really in the room. Yet Casey Thompson was still here in the spring, right? But again, we do this all the time with transfer portal. You don't just get to pick your guy; they have to want to come there too.
I do think, though, if we're being honest, right?
They thought he was better than he was. I definitely think that.
And with how kind of Casey was wanting to be in the know late, I think they just decided to go a different direction. They rolled the dice.
Yeah, and it didn't work.
But
I think there was way more of hey, we'd rather have Casey here.
I get it, but that we do have to be honest that was probably the first and the most glaring fib, right?
Yeah.
Because we did hear he was a Sunday guy.
For sure. And I don't know, we can get to this later. We got Brian Christopherson coming up next here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We are joined now by Brian Christopherson of Husker 24/7. What's up, BC?
Oh, not a lot. How are you fellas doing?
Brian, Sam, Darnold, Christopherson. How are you?
I'm glad you went that route as opposed to Johan Duran or something. Right now we're
Duran?
And we're hanging.
Hey, so how desperately are you not seeking Susan, but Mr. Ryan? You guys got to really hang in there here down the stretch.
Yeah, it's a very small branch that's breaking right now that we're trying to grab. We're a game and a half up. We are a game and a half up on the Tigers. I'm a clubhouse attendant, so I say we. But we do own the tiebreaker over Detroit, but Detroit will not lose. This is the one time I'm actually rooting for the stinking Royals. I know there's a lot of you around here. I don't mean any ill will.
Yeah, there's a lot of you around here.
A lot of you people.
But but I'm rooting for those guys, and they're letting me down. Tigers keep beating them, so I don't think the Twins are going to hang on. I think Detroit's going to catch them. That's my prediction. But I can't pretend that I don't care. I do, even though my boys will get eliminated very quickly in the playoffs. I still want to get there.
Brian,
Yes.
they
have the Orioles too, and I think they're going to see
Yes.
they're going to see Povich, Suarez, and Burns, but the Orioles aren't playing well either.
Orioles might have played themselves out of the East race by then, so maybe they won't care that much. That's one thing. The Twins play at Boston this weekend. Boston's kind of flailing, but Boston's still good enough to win 2 out of 3 against our boys or sweep them. So, Twins got to just get through this week and win 2 of the next 5 on the road, and then really have a great homestand.
Hey,
That's probably all the Twins talk people want to hear. I know this isn't necessarily Twins territory.
Do the Braves get in?
I don't think so. They're 2 out now, right?
Yeah, but the Mets their schedule isn't great down the stretch, but they are playing good baseball because they have. How many do they have they have 1, 2, 3. They have 4 with the Phillies still left, and 3 with Atlanta, and 3 with Milwaukee.
Yeah,
I bet you that's
still,
grimy.
Yeah, it is. I bet the guy who's feeling like $1 million is Ed Foley with baseball. He's a diehard Phillies fan, so you should mix it up with him.
I'm saving the question for him that I asked Ravi. I was like, man, do the Phillies really try to avoid the Diamondbacks? Like, do they try to get out of that one spot?
That's interesting. Yeah,
they might have Diamondbacks PTSD from a year ago.
My last thought on the playoff race is the best spot in the AL is the 6 seed as opposed to the 5 seed, because you get the Astros, who I would rather play than Baltimore personally. But you did make the point, the Orioles are struggling, so maybe I'm wrong there. But I'd take my chances against Houston.
The Astros are a little duct tapey. I don't know how they're doing it, but I'm glad they beat the Fathers last night, though. I don't want San Diego anywhere near Los Angeles in the postseason. I appreciate the Buster Olney spot, BC. That's pretty good, man.
Yeah, that's all I got. That's all I got for that.
Very, very, very good. But you went from Sam Darnold to Buster Olney. That's pretty good versatility.
I was about to make 8 different snarky Boston jokes about how they're terrible, but
would you like to go back to being Brian Christopherson from 24/7?
Yeah, we could do that.
Okay.
Big game ahead here, so we can cover that.
We're gonna use that transition, right? You were talking about a little PTSD. Do Nebraska football fans have PTSD with Marcus Satterfield from last year? Is that why we're having a hard time properly evaluating him this year?
Because of Sims?
Because of the PTSD of the Jeff Sims and the whole thing last year.
You know what? I don't know what the polling would be on that. I can't say that's for sure. I talked to a decent number of fans who that doesn't come up as much anymore, and they kind of gave him more of a blank slate. Like, let's see what he can do with a new quarterback and some of the weapons they've added in year 2. So I'm sure there is some of that with a fraction of the fan base. Obviously, anytime you're a coordinator at Nebraska, these are the type of games where you feel like you're on the brink of something and moving the ball forward as a program. You have to have a nice night. Otherwise, you're only as good as your last game, right? That's the way it's always been for coaches in these parts. That said, I think you have to say they're coming off pretty good performance efficiency-wise last Saturday. And, you just got to build on that. And I think this is an Illinois team that can run the ball on a little bit. I know there's a lot of respect, as you've heard all week, for their secondary, some veterans back there and how they disguise what they're doing. And it's going to be a good chess match for young Raiola. But I do think he can get the assist from a good running game if that O-line comes to play, because I even talking with the Illinois guys, I think that if there's a weakness, that if there's something they're wondering about, it's how they can stand up against a team that really tries to run the ball on them.
BC, can I make an argument that if that if Nebraska fans didn't feel like Satterfield had anointed Sims last year, let's say that like maybe he wanted Casey Thompson in the room and Casey Thompson didn't want to operate the way he wanted to operate. If that was either public knowledge or if Casey Thompson had been kind of in that conversation, do you think we would still feel like it? Because I do sense a tension with Satterfield, and I don't totally understand why, because I get the offense wasn't great last year. I also think they were operating in worst case scenarios for a lot of the season.
Yeah, you talk about putting duct tape over stuff. That's what they were doing on offense for a greater half of the season. So you have to keep that in mind. It's fair to, if backtracking last year, they did have high hopes for Jeff Sims, and they kind of banked on him, being solid, I think, or being a good, bridge into the future of what they were doing, and it just didn't work out. So sometimes as a coach, you have a personnel move that you're kind of hopeful for, and it doesn't happen, and you kind of got to eat it. It's just the way it goes. And so, yeah, there's probably some of that left over. But I would tell people who are still there, like, let's move it. Let's keep our eyes ahead. I mean, if there's criticisms to be made for some struggles that happen the rest of the year, so be it. That's fair. But it's a fresh slate with a talented quarterback who's growing by the day, and you got some nice parts around it. And it does feel like they think inside their walls they've got some guys where they can really play to their strengths in certain ways and be very effective, and they kind of know what they want to do. So, we'll see if it works out or not. But right now, I guess you'd say that the arrow is trending back up, and now let's see if they can keep it that way.
Too soon, BC, and I know you know who you're talking to, a running backs guy, but too soon for any flowers to go to Coach Barthel's address? Because doesn't seem to matter when guys play. If they play, they pretty much play at a high level.
Yeah, I would say EJ's group's done really well. And if you go back to Saturday night's game, Dowdell didn't have a ton of touches. Nobody did because of the snap count. But on the first series, maybe even in the second series, there were like 3 runs Dante had where it could have been like no gain or 1 yard, and he got like 5 yards. Like there were 2 or 3 of those that I was really impressed with, and they're not the ones that are going to show up on the highlight package on the news afterwards, but they're the kind that keep you in a good down and distance situation and kind of show why he is where he is right now, I think. And then, it was nice to see Emmett splash when he came in there late. I just love that guy's personality.
After not really playing last week.
Yeah, he just doesn't let stuff like that push him down into the ditch. He just says, like, okay, this is where it's at. I know I'm going to be called on at some point, and when I am, I'm going to make plays. And you have to say, through his Husker career, when he touched the ball, he's probably had more explosives than about anybody from that position, certainly. So that was really good to see from Emmett, and he's a guy you would think could really factor into this one.
You just can't pull that off in that room without being a good communicator. Like, you have to be clear with kind of what the plan is, or the high level has to be the trust level has to be really high, or guys don't respond like that. Trust me, like a bit, it has to be at a high level, because that's a tough position group personality wise, historically, running backs to manage, because we can be on the high, we can be needy.
No. Oh yeah, I can tell.
Wow.
No. I do think, one thing I'd say though is, like, back in your day, Damon, Nebraska was that program that you did have to handle that, because you had 4 or 5 guys who were really gifted, and that was just, the stable was always full like that. So it's kind of cool that we're now having this conversation 3 games in the season where we really like where they're trending, and you like, at least 3 guys pretty well. So that's good, but I think you're accurate. It does take a coach with the right touch As far as being transparent about this is why we're doing this and this is what we're going to do here. And obviously so far it seemed to work out, and it's going to be a long season. There's going to be something where someone has a setback, unfortunately. That's just how it goes at that spot. And so you're going to have to call on everybody. And maybe some guys we're not even talking about as much now at that position. That's how it happened a year ago, and it could very well happen this fall. And I think this coaching staff does a good job of always putting it in front of guys like, hey, we're planning on playing more than 12 games this year. And there's a good chance you're going to get called on at some point. You better be ready because it's probably happening. And if you can get guys to really buy into that and stay at the ready, that's a good coaching job right there. That's like half the battle.
BC, I asked Ravi earlier if, because I think Coach Rule is getting ready to go on one of the shows this morning on ESPN. I think I heard it on my way in, like 8:30 or something, and I asked Ravi, even though that he's been in Carolina, from a national standpoint to the good, is this different for him? Because I even think we talk about his accomplishments at Temple and Baylor as kind of like this yesteryear thing. But I feel like the national intensity has ratcheted up. Like we jumped from not going to a bowl game to playoff dark horse. You just kind of casually referenced playing more than 12 games. And it's like, wait a minute, really?
Yeah.
Is there a transition for him as well, do you think?
I don't know. I just know that
there's not much he hasn't handled.
Yeah. I think he has always thought that this team, this program, was he's given credit first off to some of the previous coaches, and I always respect that about him too.
Yep.
Some of the position coaches, he's always went out of his way to say that, and because of that, he inherited your guys like Giff and Ty Robinson and Nash, and we go down the list. All these guys who have been around and been through it, and they just have the right mentality. They have the Rule kind of mentality that was already sort of there. They just had to build upon it. And so I think that helped him, and it told him right away, like, maybe I can be a year further ahead here than I have been at other places because some of that groundwork is there. I've always sensed that was the thinking. And then you walked around the building, a couple months ago, and I don't know if it's still up, but you go into the facility and you see like on the big video board, there was like the playoff bracket, with the 12 teams. It was like, here's where the bowl games are and the road to the championship. And it's in front of guys' eyes every day when they're sitting in like the cold tub, so that's, this is they have not backed down in their walls. They're not just talking about that all the time. It's going 1-0, but certainly that's at least been in front of guys like, hey, don't think you can't do this because I think you're a pretty good football team. And, you watch us chasing three things and you see how he communicates that to them before the Colorado game. Says, this is a good football team, and I think the guys believe they are too. And so because of that, I also don't sense on Friday night within the team, there's like this sense of like, oh no, how are we going to handle this stage or not? We'll see if they do, but I think they're really a bunch that expects good things to happen more than you would think for a team that hasn't been to a bowl since 2016.
We're talking with Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7. BC, I want to go back to the assistants there for a second. Who deserves flowers more but is less likely to get them, just the way we talk about the assistants? EJ Barthel or Rob Dvorak?
Maybe Dvorak. That's a good question. It's
like they're both really good, right?
Apparently.
Yeah.
The results would indicate.
And what's funny listening to him ask that question? I feel like as a fan base, we felt the same about their respective position groups. We were kind of like, okay,
yep,
that's nice. But we weren't like, ooh, studs, right? Like, I kind of feel like that.
Definitely. definitely they're one and the same, those two spots. And Bullock and Bayer, just the way they have played off each other. I mean, Bayer, the way he attacked that Colorado game, especially after the comments, and he just backed it up. I love that, and I don't know if they liked that he said that or not.
Well, they pumped out the video on IG, right? And that came from the football department. Like they backed him.
Was it after the game? Maybe,
Yes.
But I don't know.
Yeah.
But whether they liked it beforehand or not, maybe they did, because I think he just said the quiet part out loud. So I don't think it was anything that everybody else was thinking the same thing. But the fact is, he went out there and he said, okay, there's not going to be two guys you're going to need two guys to block me on special teams when I come down there. And then he bulldozed someone over and he did that. He had the 4th down stop. And you're right. Like at linebacker, they're just getting an awful lot out of him, but also John Bullock. Rule had a comment before the season, like he's an all-conference type of guy. And I have to be honest, when I heard that, I thought, oh, that's kind of one of those, like, head coach says something nice about a guy. It's a little elevated from what he actually is. I don't know. 3 games in, he's playing at a level where you'd have to put him amongst some of the better guys in this league. He's just been all over the field. That first drive Colorado had in the second half, I know they got 3 points out of it, but they didn't get 7. And the big part was John Bullock was just every freaking where you could possibly be, it felt like. And he's had some series like that where he's just erased stuff and been a menace to the other side. So you got to give Dvorak his due.
Well, and BC, I think we also are forgetting Javen Rice not playing, who was going to be a starter. And, I mean, maybe I'm wrong here, but doesn't he also get credit for, like, guys that we kind of sort of lump in with the defensive linemen, but are actually linebackers, like MJ Sherman and Prince Will and guys like that? Like, those are linebackers too. Like, we never talk about them when we're talking about Dvorak.
Good call.
Yeah, you get some credit for them. Jack Potenza as well.
I like him a lot. I like him, BC. Good dude.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's doing a good job, obviously, because MJ Sherman, you talk about someone who was kind of like
left for dead,
the running backs and linebackers, where it's like, okay. All the hype had kind of subsided from last year when he came in from Georgia, and there's all that. And then it's like, oh, okay, maybe he wasn't quite what we thought he was. And now people are seeing, okay, it's sort of like Ty Robinson and some of these guys. There is more there, and the staff has been getting it out of them on the defensive side. MJ Sherman's playing at a really high level, and Prince Will, I mean, he goes 100 miles an hour, and occasionally you wonder if a flag or two is going to come out with it, but he gets there in a hurry. It's going to be fun to watch that as he keeps growing into that spot. He just is such a elite talent, I would say. It's not all there yet, but you can see it coming together, and it's kind of fun.
BC, how did I'd be curious to see, like, if you looked around the room and were like, he's not talking to me. How did the maybe I can't be so candid with you guys land with your cohorts in the media?
I didn't hear anything much about it. I'm trying to think what it was connected to. There's so many things that run together.
It was the special teams, because he was talking about how they've been practicing well, but they have to do it in games. And I think it was Bruntz actually asked, what's not translating?
Brunt,
yeah. And he took the opportunity to get into the negativity about the wide receivers too.
Yes, yeah. And so I think that's where it started, though.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't hear much about it from the media part. From our segment, it's all fair game. Like, the media writes stuff sometimes or interpret stuff a certain way, and sometimes the coach would be like, I don't think you interpreted that the right way. That definitely happens. So maybe that was one of those cases. I don't think it was a big thing. It was probably Bruntz. Bruntz just gets under people's skin. He's got kind of that personality where you're like, what's up? You're still wearing the A's hat like they're staying in Oakland. It's just frustrating. So,
hey, that's a Miller North guy. Be nice.
I know. Bruntz is one of the best dudes around. I hopefully people know that. I'm joking. But, I didn't take anything of it, Damon. And I also think he's always doing whatever, like, he's speaking to his team sometimes, and he's going to protect his team in certain spots too, and that's what he should do.
BC, as we get into Illinois, which, we've only got like a minute and a half left. We've been talking about other stuff. That's okay. As we get into Illinois, what are your expectations this week? Do you expect it to look a lot like Northern Iowa? Like I'm having a hard time kind of putting my finger on how I think this game's going to play out.
I expected the defense to come out with their hair on fire and have it tightened up more than last week. And I do think it's a big deal to have Bayer on the field for the whole game. I think, like you heard Tony White talk about him and Jamari, they do add some juice or some edginess. That's very true. So that's going to help. I think it's a big game for the corners. Tommy Hill's already sort of proven himself. But if he can do a number on, whoever he gets assigned to, whether he's facing Pat Bryant or, Franklin, I think that's good numbers for Illinois. If they can kind of take one of those guys out of the equation and make them a little bit more one-dimensional, I think they're going to be fine on that side of the ball. It's the biggest thing, just avoid those leaky yards so that a play that should be 2nd and 8 doesn't turn into 2nd and 5 like it did last week. And then on offense, don't turn it over. If Nebraska's even in the turnover game, I think they win the game. It's as simple as that. If it's a deal where you go -2 or -3 and play in Illinois' hands the way they beat Kansas, then yeah, obviously anything can happen. But I think I like Nebraska by about 13. I've 27-14 was my pick.
That's our guy, Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7. Known Michael Brunt's hater, as always. BC, we appreciate the time. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, BC.
Thanks, guys.
We'll be back with Kevin Sjuts coming up next on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Welcome back. We're halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. We're joined now by Kevin Sjuts from 1011 News in Lincoln. What's up, Kevin?
Good morning. What a crazy week. This Friday game for Nebraska just, I don't know, it heightened my anxiety. It's squeezed the week. It's nuts, guys.
You're on tonight, too, because, oh, by the way, Stanford is a pretty quality opponent coming fresh off of getting the brooms out against Texas. So how do you like those apples, Suits?
Yeah. This was supposed to be the calm day of the week, with Nebraska playing. Well, see, the other thing, too, of course, Nebraska plays Friday, high school football Friday. And here in Lincoln, because town's going to be nuts Friday night, every high school football game that was going to be in the capital city this week is now on Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
So Thursday becomes like a mini Friday for us at 10-11. We've got 5 high school games to cover in the city on Thursday. So that's why I say Wednesday was quote unquote the slow day. But we got the big volleyball match at the Devaney tonight.
Yeah.
So Kevin, you got a couple double headers tomorrow.
We've got a doubleheader at Seacrest Field. We've got a doubleheader at UBT Stadium. We got a game at Beechner. Don't ask me who's playing where because I haven't even gotten that far.
Kevin, as you're kind of you're right there in it. As the community, are we kind of embracing the fact, or are we okay with the fact that we think Nebraska could be pretty good? Or is each week still, in your opinion, seem like a referendum on the direction of the program?
No, I think everybody believes that this team's pretty good. And that goes back to the Colorado win. And even I would say UTEP, the way Nebraska played so efficiently in the season opener, I think people have just been waiting for a good product, and your eyes don't lie, right? The low turnover numbers, because that was the biggest issue heading into the year is, with the 31 giveaways a year ago, can they clean? They did. They upgraded at the quarterback spot. The defense is as good as advertised. So I believe people truly feel like this is a really good football team. And the excitement for every game here on out, I think is going to be really, really high.
Kevin, I asked DB this earlier in the week, but I'm curious what you think. How good do you think Rule believes this team can be?
I really think Matt believes this is a team that can make the playoffs. I do. And he's not one to just blow a bunch of smoke. Like he's pretty authentic, pretty genuine. So when he talks about, trying to be competitive in the Big Ten and win the conference and maybe make it in the playoff, the game changer here is that the playoff is 12 teams. If it was 4 teams and you're mentioning playoff after a 5-win season, that just sounds crazy and a little absurd. But because more teams get in and because Nebraska has the personnel it has, I truly think in his heart that this is a team, and he's seen it before, guys. He's seen a team or a program that wasn't so good one year and then flipped it in an off season. And because he's experienced that, he knows it can be done. So in his heart of hearts, I truly think Matt Rhule and this coaching staff believes Nebraska is in the upper crust of the Big Ten. And if you're there, you've got a chance to make a playoff.
Kev, of all the skill sets that Coach Rhule has, where would you put roster management as something you think he does pretty well?
I think he does a great job of it. Look at Davey, that's a good question. And I think the way I would answer it is the way that he is so transparent about it. Look at yesterday when he's talking about, or 2 days ago when he's talking about Riley Van Poppel, and he just openly offers in week 4, he's going to be a 4-game guy. So they're going to redshirt him.
Yeah.
So when you evaluate his roster management, it's not just how he places people in the right spots and get the right guys on the field at specific times. It's also like what the long-term plan is. And you can also point to, at one point, Tommy Hill was playing wide receiver at Nebraska.
Not at one point last year.
Right.
This was not like, oh, he was a true freshman. We're trying to figure. This was last year.
And now he's a potential first-round draft pick. This is silly in most instances, but because of, as DB pointed out, roster management, like evaluating skill set and seeing where a guy can most benefit, 1, the team, but 2, also play long-term, I think that this staff is really keen, really savvy, and I love the way that going back to spring ball, the way they'll tinker with some of that stuff just to see if a guy will fit at a certain spot.
Kevin, speaking of roster management, were you surprised at all about the, announcement that Riley Van Poppel they were planning to redshirt him, considering how highly we all thought of him and what role he might play this year?
No, just because, it's almost like a pitcher in innings, right? If you're only going to throw X amount of innings in the big leagues, why bring him up, right? Just let him continue to build endurance and be able to work a game deep into the 7th inning if you keep him in AAA. And I think that's kind of the same thing. It's not about Riley Van Poppel, guys. Well, it is long term. But for the instance of the 2024 season, it's about Ty Robinson and Nash Hutmaker and Jamari Butler and Cam Linhart and Princewell Umanmielen. Like just the number of guys they have up front that can help the team immediately. Why would you sacrifice a redshirt year for a dude who might only play 15 to 20 snaps per game? I think it's pretty wise. And as long as Riley and his family is on board with it, and I think that they are, and there's no better example than Ty Robinson, because he is clearly reaping the benefits right now of being a 6th-year player. He is a man amongst boys, and he is just continuing to elevate his game and I believe his pro future.
Yeah, it's incredible. And it's like, I look at whether it's Daniel Kalen or even Caleb, right? If those safeties stay healthy, like there's really no need, even though you're close. You look at Riley Van Poppel and Keona Davis. Like if he feels that Van Poppel is, this is a lack of a better term, like a better player than Keona Davis, he can do the same thing to Keona Davis next year, right? And insert the multi-year starter in Van Poppel. Like just the forward thinking, because who's playing now doesn't necessarily indicate. It's more about, it's exactly what you said. Who's playing in front of you, and are they staying healthy? Because like if those guys are healthy and they're playing well, everybody else is just a spot fill in anyway, right? Like that's no fun.
It's like you have your own farm system.
That's what he's doing.
Within a 120-man roster.
That's what he's doing.
You've got your top guys and you have your developmental players. And part of that is, it's taxing on the coaching staff, right? you have to identify who those developmental players are and then have those open conversations and still make sure, and this is the one thing that I think separates this coaching staff, is that they pour into the younger players. It's not like, oh, your scout team, give us a good look. Thanks. Have a nice day. No, like they are still developing those guys. And you're seeing that in so many different instances. James Williams.
Another good call.
In the running back room, like that was Emmett Johnson last year. Like they weren't just letting him, be a scout player for the upcoming offense that Nebraska is going to face. They were truly trying to help him improve his technique, his game. And then all of a sudden, with the rash of injuries they had, he was ready to go when his number was called.
Well, and Kevin, is it possible that, they're just looking at it and it's like, okay, so for 4 games, Keona Davis is going to be the backup at the inside spot. And for 4 games, it's going to be Riley Van Poppel. For 4 games, it's going to be Brody
Su'a-Lefautu.
Yeah, and for 4 games, it's going to be Su'a-Lefautu. So they're just like, we're just going to redshirt them all. And just like, if we all think they're about at the same level,
then they get to hit the ground running
next year. And we only need 8 to 10 snaps a game anyway. Like, is it just like, hey, we've got enough guys. Let's just redshirt them all and not burn any of them.
Absolutely. And then, when you think of next year, 2025, you're not going to have the panic of, oh my goodness, we don't have Ty and we don't have it's like, oh, well, these guys have just been waiting in the wings. And of course, there's going to be a drop off, but it won't be as substantial because you've redshirted those players.
That's our guy, Kevin Sjuts, 1011 News in Lincoln. Kevin, enjoy your fun and busy week, and maybe you'll have to take a little time off on Saturday.
Hey, you ever look forward to the weekend? It seems weird to say out loud.
The cold beverage Saturday night is going to taste really good.
Yes, my man. I'm right there with you.
Kevin, we appreciate it. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Kev.
Be well, boys.
Speaking of being in places you can get a cold beverage on Saturday night, Union Omaha's got you covered. Get to UnionOmaha.com to get tickets for Saturday night's matchup versus your number 1 Union Omaha versus number 3 Knoxville, Warner Park, 7 p.m. And it's Oktoberfest night. Get a free Stein if you get there early enough. Make sure you go check out UnionOmaha.com for all the details. Coming up next, Cynthia Frelund from the NFL Network. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. Joining us now is Cynthia Frelund from the NFL Network. Cynthia, how are you this morning?
I'm not as good as you. I'm not at the bar and grill right now.
We're on the other side where the studio is built, so it's still kind of off limits to us at this time, but
till after the show.
Okay.
Give us about another hour or two.
The show's done, but it still like shortens the distance between the show and the bar and grill.
Yeah. Speaking of bar and grill, who apparently has a lot more bar and grill that's watching their defense thrive, the crazy fans in Buffalo. Whether they're sober or haven't eaten a ton for those crazy nutty tailgates, how surprised are they that this defense, despite the injuries, has been able to function at a relatively high level?
I mean, they've got to be pretty shocked because
I am.
I think the whole world is. I mean, but also you have to remember that this was, it still is. It's only been 2 weeks. Josh Allen sort of, are you true big capital E elite, or are you just very, very good, right? And Josh Allen has showed us and made a really strong case through 2 games of being capital E elite because he's basically taking the entire team on his shoulders. That week 1 come from behind win was pretty much on Josh.
Cynthia, I've got another question on what's real and what's not here because I am having a really hard time with the New Orleans Saints right now. And after we
remember when Dennis Allen was on the hot seat, that was funny.
Remember when New Orleans hated Derek Carr more than anyone? Week 1, you go, okay, it's the Panthers, whatever. That's a dumpster franchise. Okay. But no matter how you feel about the Cowboys, they're a hell of a lot better than Carolina. I don't know are the Saints actually good?
I think a little bit of both is true. I don't necessarily think they're as good as it looks because it's very hard. I think right now, Derek Carr's passer rating is over 143. There's a reason why no one ever ends the season with that number. So I think it's a little bit of both, right? Opportunity and also that they're probably better than we thought, but they're pretty much just running outside zone. Someone will get hip to that like very quickly because that's all they're doing. It's just like, hey, you want to do this? Okay. Hey, it's still working. Okay. Hey, outside zone. How about outside zone? You know, it's like, what's for dinner? Chicken or ticket?
Cynthia, and maybe listen. Full disclosure, I picked this guy to have not come back, but kind of come back because I think we forgot about him at the quarterback spot. So I'm over effusive of the praise, but man, Kyler Murray is playing well. And a lot of it is, yep, I did call my shot. But it seems like the way that they want to play is sustainable, especially if Harrison Jr. is more week 2 Harrison Jr. than week 1, right? Like Kyler Murray, we forget, is still a really good quarterback.
Yeah. Turns out, still a really good quarterback. You know, the concern I have for the Cardinals is not really on the offensive side of the ball. I think we pretty much preseason nailed their struggles. I don't think they have a very good O-line. I do think Kyler Murray erases a lot of mistakes. You're also seeing them roll with 13 personnel, so 3 tight end sets at the second highest rate in the league. Only the Steelers are more, and they also have a mobile quarterback and a shoddy O-line. So, you know, they're doing the right things to overcome the flaws that I kind of think we got that part right? Love a good confirmation bias with that. But ultimately, their defense still, other than Buda Baker, I have a lot of questions still. I'm not sure if they can sustain a pass rush beyond an O-line that doesn't look like the Rams who are playing, you know, with some bubble gum and a paper clip. You know, they're just so injured. So
that's about right, too.
Right. Yeah, so I'm just worried about, it's not the offense that's the Cardinals' issue, it's the defense for me.
Cynthia, let's stay on the offensive side of the ball here with some of the young quarterbacks we've seen. I have a really hard time deciding when is too early to be like, yeah, I just don't see it. But you do see guys like C.J. Stroud that are pretty much good right away. Like how early on, whether it's guys like Caleb Williams early now, Bo Nix, or whether it's an Anthony Richardson, who we did see some last year. Like when do you start to feel comfortable being like, I kind of know who this guy is and I'm not sure I love it?
To be fair, it's usually around 8 games, but the problem is those starts and stops. I don't really know because the starts and stops like Anthony Richardson has had, that's tough because you're kind of getting like, you know, let's compare Richardson and Stroud, for example. So like Stroud, you know, they've added a run game. Joe Mixon, I know he got hurt, but they've still added a run game and they're getting some more efficiency in pushing the run game. They didn't have that last year. So that's adding an element that defenses have to account for. Whereas, you know, Anthony Richardson, their passing game isn't the strongest threat in the National Football League. So people kind of can spy what Anthony Richardson did, his tendencies. He's not getting that like element of surprise benefit right out of the gate.
So I have to bring up one of these guys that's kind of in that same class, in Bryce Young, that got benched this week.
Travesty.
How much do you put on Bryce Young, and how much are you like, I'm not sure like if Bryce Young and CJ Stroud switch positions, how much different are each of those guys' lives?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what went on behind closed doors, especially year one, but it's really hard to look at a situation. Like, just look at his stats when he faces zone defenses. He's thrown 0 touchdowns. He's got 8 interceptions in like 300 snaps facing zone. So point being a relevant number of snaps.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an area where, you know, you have to take advantage of increased space. Like man coverage, okay, you could say your receivers are blanketed. We get it. That's hard to navigate. But zone is a little bit more of not easy, but the space is a little bit different. And the fact that it's been so bad on those downs, it kind of makes me think it's 50-50. 50 on him, 50 on his staff, because they're not getting him in situations where he's able to throw to a space and get an open receiver. They're not taking what defenses give them very well.
Very similar QBRs. Who's closer, both coming off injury, who's closer to being like who we've seen the first 2 weeks at the quarterback spot? Kirk Cousins or Joe Burrow?
Ooh, Kirk Cousins. I mean, look, Joe Burrow, they always start slow. Part of it is because nobody decides to play in their preseason. I don't understand it. But, you know, these organizations where they have like, and by the way, if you look at additional facts about them, it's their high draft picks just don't play. Like Chris Jenkins, the defensive tackle, who was part of the way they were going to stop the run. he's not playing, right?
Yeah.
DJ Reader's up in Detroit, and he hasn't even started. And that's kind of a recurring theme. You know, they did that with, Dax Hill, except for Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. They can't get it together early season. So I'm not worried about Joe Burrow. But I do think Sam Darnold has a bit overperformed, but I think we're seeing more of his trajectory compared to what, this is who he can be. This is what the right system and the right fit and the right opportunities and Justin Jefferson and Aaron Jones mean for a quarterback who has a lot of talent, a lot of brains, that has previously been in not great situations.
We're talking with Cynthia Frelund from the NFL Network. Cynthia, I know you like to dig into the numbers and metrics and things like that. So I want to ask you, is there a unit or a team that has outperformed your expectations by a pretty significant margin through 2 games this year?
Well, I think probably, the Packers defense was this enigma for me. Obviously we know Jordan Love being out changes their offensive looks, and it's really impressive that Matt LaFleur was able to create a rushing game plan that worked so well for them, right? Okay, great. But their defense, now they bring in Jeff Hafley from Boston College, and they don't have the personnel that would suggest a fit with what Hafley likes to do in his pass coaching thoughts, right? It's a different strategy. However, the team now leads the league in interceptions, overall. They're doing a nice job. It's an interesting dichotomy between, it's not a you can run on this Packers defense like we always hear before. So that they've totally exceeded my expectations. There's a few others, but I think that one's one no one's really I could point to, surprise. Okay, Saints, yeah, of course, and
right.
What things we talked about, but that one's kind of one that's maybe flying under the radar.
I'll give you one because I think the schedule is not. What do you think of the Chargers? Right, it's the Raiders and the Panthers so far. But what do you think about the Chargers, especially with all their new talent on offense?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing about the Chargers is investing in the O-line. Joe Alt is such a high pick as opposed to taking the splashy wide receiver in this day and age. Is people don't usually do that. It doesn't usually keep you your job, but they did that because they were afforded the opportunity to do so. And that makes a big difference. I think that O-line and the efficiency with J.K. Dobbins, especially out of the gate here, is great. I don't think that they're sustainable from a standpoint of their secondary is not, the best formula to win is to have a really strong run game, be great in the trenches, and have a really good pass defense. And while they have the guys up front, the horses up front to be able to make that happen, they don't necessarily on the back end of that defense. Once you start facing a Patrick Mahomes, a really pass-heavy offense that's doing complicated things, it's going to become much more difficult. I mean, the Raiders and the Panthers are both in interesting situations where they're struggling a bit and trying to figure out their identity. That's also the case for the Chargers defense. Yeah,
Asante Samuel Jr., Christian Fulton, Jashir Taylor. You mean they may still have a little work to do, Cynthia?
Just a little, listen, the funny part is remember Jeff Saturday won a game as a head coach. Point being is the team 1 through team 32 aren't as different as it may seem. I know, the Panthers don't look great, but parity is what makes the NFL so good. So, it seems really bad or it seems really good because of a specific score or one data point. But the truth is they're not as far off as you might think.
Cynthia, we appreciate the time as always. Great stuff. Hopefully we'll catch up with you again soon.
Thanks, Cynthia.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Enjoy the bar. Morning bar. Enjoy.
That's Cynthia Frelund from the NFL Network. We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio. Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. It seems like just yesterday, Jack Hoffman was scoring a touchdown in the spring game. It was actually 11 years ago. And since then, Team Jack Foundation has raised over $13 million for research into pediatric brain cancer, which became front and center after Jack Hoffman's touchdown run. And coming up a week from tomorrow is the 12th annual Team Jack Foundation Radiothon, September 26th, presented by the Home Agency. Make sure you get to teamjackfoundation.org to find out how you can listen, how to donate, and how to get involved. That's teamjackfoundation.org. DB, want to stay with the NFL here for a second?
Why?
Because it's
that sounds so serious.
Why
so serious?
It's the professional. It's real football, as some people would say.
I hear. Wow.
That's how you know I can't help myself, because like I'm just inviting more punishment.
So I coached with a guy who played 8-man, and he was texting me over the lunch break, and he was like, "Wow, it's in my texting group, your partner is in hot water."
It's because none of them listen to the actual segment.
I said, I don't want to do it a disservice. I basically said, that's not the first. I didn't think of the disrespect of 8-man. Otherwise, if I
You would
felt
have pushed
like
back.
if I felt like that, I
Yeah.
probably would have said something, knowing how I feel about
Yeah,
it.
in real time. And I brought that up to people. I was like, okay, DB was there in real time, did not have a problem with what I said, because you understood the context of what I was talking about.
Yeah. So, I sent him a couple of tweets from people that actually played 8-man that was like,
nobody had a problem with it.
I didn't see it, no big deal. But then he also saw the ones where people did have a problem. So I was like, maybe you have to listen to the whole segment and formulate your own opinion.
That's that's what I've noticed. The difference is people that saw the clip out are mad about some of them. If anybody's mad about it, it's because they only saw the clip out. Anybody that listened to the whole segment didn't have a problem. They might have been like, "Oh, we wish you would have used a better word." Okay, sure, whatever.
Okay,
but
before we get to the NFL, what word would you have used? Because people were mad at real?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think I said actual, and then I said real. And I don't know. I guess I would have had to qualify as 11-man football versus 8.
Yeah.
But like in real time, when you're doing a radio show, like that seemed cumbersome. Like I'm just talking, right? So yeah, that probably, I don't know that there's a better adjective without being like, well, he's played 8-man football and this is 11-man football and it's different. Like, I think the quickest way to get to the point was how I did it. I'm not sure there's another like single word to say. Maybe traditional football would be but traditional football, soccer. So I don't know what to tell you.
And now that I'm thinking about it real time, that he's coaching 11-man, because he was an 8-man guy. I'm like, I wonder what he would say about the transition.
Yeah, it's different.
Although Coach Samanji wanted to hire him immediately, and you have to kind of go through like a football acumen interview.
Yeah.
So he's clearly bright.
Oh, for sure.
Like,
I think people took it. So people went way off because of, I used the words real and actual. People thought I was being disrespectful to the work people put in, which like that, I don't even know how you get there from what was said. They were like, oh, these kids put their hearts in it. It's the lifeblood of the Western rural Nebraska communities. I was like, we're not even talking about that. We're talking about Carter Nelson and Garrett McGuire. Like, you guys, you know what it felt like? It's like, okay, so you guys are projecting a little bit. Like, you feel some kind of way that you're not respected in general. So anything somebody says about that isn't glowingly positive, you take as a personal slight. That's not a me problem. That's a you problem. Like, go to therapy, get it figured out. We'll be cool.
See, doubling down.
I am going to double down because it's stupid. Like, if I get into a new relationship and I bring my baggage from an old relationship, that's not her problem. That's a me problem, right? And somebody said yesterday, it's like, well, regardless. And speaking of which, two things. Number one, the 8-man foundation that got mad at me in the first place was like, oh, we know you didn't mean to be disrespectful. Then I was like, then what the F is the point of this whole conversation? If you know what I meant, why are we doing this? Oh, I know why. It's called grandstanding is what it's called. Super disingenuous. Number one. Number two, somebody else, a different person, said to me, hey, guess what? Like, it doesn't matter what your intent is. It still makes people feel a certain way. I was like, hey, I can only control my intent. If I'm trying to control how other people feel about the way I say things, I would go crazy. I can control my intent and do as best I can. I feel I've done that. How you feel about it, you're bringing other things to the table, and I need you to go talk to a professional about it. You're mad. Hey, the NFL's pretty cool.
I like the NFL.
NFL's good.
I like the NFL quite a bit.
You think Bryce Young would be good in 8-man?
Yes.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
He'd probably be all right.
He
might be playing in the Arena League pretty soon.
Anyways, what I was going to say is Coach Jensen made a nice transition from 8-man to 11.
Hey, so is Carter Nelson. Look at that. Come for full circle. He's got it. Much like Creed's underrated 4th album, Full Circle. Anyway, let's talk about Bryce Young.
Yeah.
Because I think Carolina's botching this horribly. I mean, when we could talk about Coach Rule a little bit here too, because no matter what happens in Carolina, somehow they bring it back around to being Coach Rule's fault. And it's like, hey, you just have a bad franchise, right?
Yeah.
Like that's talk about bringing something to the table, like bringing some old feelings to the table and projecting it on somebody new.
And now they got to play without Derek Brown, and you gave up Burns in the offseason, and
because here's
you
what
overpaid for a couple of your offensive linemen.
And you made a terrible trade to get the Bryce Young pick. That was a bad trade.
Yeah.
You gave up a ton of picks. You gave up a really good wide receiver. It was a bad trade.
And the funny thing about Bryce Young is nobody rather questioned whether he could actually play. It was, could he hold up?
Could he be healthy? That's why I think it's a Carolina problem. Because I know Cynthia brought up the zone coverage stats, which I thought was really good. I think that's a confidence thing, though, not an ability thing. I think his confidence is shot.
Yeah.
And you can see it. Like, you see his body language. He does not look like a person.
I used to tell Severe, because he watches all the games too, just and he sees them a couple times a year against the Saints. It's like, and I told him it's like he just throws timid.
Mm-hmm. His confidence is shot. Like, he's going to have to do, like, maybe he needs to come to San Francisco and go on the Sam Darnold plan or something, because the Jets did a similar thing to Darnold in just being a trash franchise that like ruins quarterbacks. I don't know if Bryce Young is salvageable, but the ability was never the question. And that's why I'm like, okay, Carolina, because man, if you get on Twitter on a Sunday when Carolina's struggling, the Matt Rule stuff is flying around. He trends almost every week.
It's ridiculous.
It's wild. And that's that's bringing old stuff to a relationship. Like, your owner's bad and you can't change it. So you blame it on somebody else, right? You've got upset feelings about something that has nothing to do with Matt Rule, but you can't change the thing, or you feel like you can't change the thing that you're actually mad about. Like, you can't change the fact that consolidation and all this stuff in Western Nebraska has left these schools in a place where it's really challenging to field a football team. I sympathize with that. I really do. But that's not my problem. I didn't do that. Like, it's the same thing in Carolina. Like, Western Nebraska and rural communities can't change that about what's happening to their communities, and that sucks.
It's an interesting analogy.
But in the same way, Carolina fans can't change their owner. Getting rid of an owner is the hardest thing to do in sport. It's a miracle the Clippers pulled it off, honestly.
And it took
a while. And then Snyder in Washington took years.
Yeah.
They've been trying to get rid of that guy for a decade, and it finally happened, right?
Jerry Richardson
was one that they were like, hey, let's get rid of this guy. And then they did, and it got worse, right? And so you're in the situation of, hey, there's a thing that's really bad that I can't change. So you get mad at the other stuff that you feel like you have some say over. And I don't know that this franchise is going to get better until either Dave Tepper sells or figures out, hey, maybe I need to do things differently, which is really hard for guys that have been super successful in other endeavors.
Should Leggett been able to beat out Mingo?
I mean, you would think so.
Okay.
Ideally.
You made the play for Deontay Johnson, who isn't really a number one.
Mm-hmm.
He's got number one talent. I don't think he's a number one.
Sure.
Who's Thielen is there too?
Yeah. He's not been Thielen for a minute.
Yeah.
Like, he's not been that guy for a minute. Fair.
You acquired Josie Jewell in the offseason. You tried to address your offensive line, but you spent how much did you? I think they spent $20 million on a guard, a tackle. Like, I think you still like Hubbard.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
Who else is out there? Miles Sanders.
So let me ask you, because Mike Lombardi, I think. Or no, it wasn't Lombardi. It was Daniel Jeremiah. I saw him on some show the other day, and he said this is one of the worst rosters he's ever seen. Do you think the roster is actually that bad?
So I said that in the offseason, so I have to say yes.
Okay.
If anybody calls me on it, they'll be like, DB, I said their roster was atrocious.
Okay. Because
when I look at, I don't love the roster.
Fair, but the reason I ask is because I'm not convinced.
That's for anybody that remembers what I actually said.
I really don't know that even a better like, I think we're in a toxic environment in Carolina.
You might be. I don't know.
Like, I don't know how good the roster would have to be to overcome that.
I feel like
Is that a fair question?
Yeah, but what were we saying about teams like New Orleans last year? We made a lot of fun of their quarterback situation.
Sure, but that's different.
Well-
Bad quarterback situation and a toxic
But I
organization.
don't think
is
we love
different.
their roster either, outside of some guys on defense.
Yeah, that's fair. But if you have
Remember when I used to have to give Derek Carr stats, and I was like, he's actually, guys, he's not that bad.
yeah, that's why I don't understand the hate. I get he's not special. Like, I get he's not special, but I've never thought he was bad. He's probably a slightly
I
less
think
good
some other
version of Kirk
comparable
Cousins
rosters would be New England,
with Carolina or with New Orleans.
Carolina.
Okay.
I still don't love. I mean, I don't even know if I like the Saints roster. It's okay.
Yeah, it's better than Carolina's.
Yeah.
But let's say, I think you're right. New England's a good example because people looked at that roster and go, oh, this is a terrible roster.
Yeah.
Guess who's been a hell of a lot more competitive than Carolina? New England. Right?
With a first-year coach.
With a first-year coach, with a guy that nobody likes at quarterback. Like, nobody cares about Jacoby Brissett as an NFL quarterback at all. Career backup. Nobody wants him to be the starter. The fact that he is starting, people look at it as a red flag with Drake May.
I don't, man, without looking, I don't think there's anybody in this state that could name me all three starting wide receivers for the Patriots.
Hey, by the way,
I can't.
Can Derek Carr ever be the star of a team? I mean, can he be
It's a
that
kind of a
guy?
weird question.
Because
At
with the
this
Raiders,
stage in his career,
with the Raiders,
probably
he never
not.
was.
It's Polk, Douglas, and Harry, by the way,
Oh, yeah.
or Hunter Henry. I mean, and I get it. He's playing tight end, but those are the guys. Unless you want to count a healthy KJ Osborne, but
Can he be that way with the Patriots?
that's what they're
working with.
That's what they're trying.
And they're
out there in New England.
way more. That's why I asked about the toxic organization, because
I don't.
this isn't just like a 2-game sample
at this
size.
stage in his career, Shane, I would say no, because nobody liked Dennis Allen last year.
No. He was like on the hot seat.
And you could easily make the case that he outcoached McCarthy on Sunday.
Oh, yeah, I think so. That's fair.
Could easily make the case.
Yeah.
I mean, I have no idea what Zimmer's doing
I don't know if I would
defensively.
I don't know if I would nail it down to McCarthy versus Allen, but the Saints were much better coached than the Cowboys were on Sunday. If you want to get it down to like coordinators,
yeah, they just
or whatever,
They
like,
just
that's
look
fine.
ill prepared.
Yeah, they looked like they had no idea what they were doing.
And what's wrong with their running game?
I mean, they got two guys they got a guy that hasn't been good in 5 years. I mean, when's the last time you were scared of Ezekiel Elliott?
Oh, he actually looks fit too.
Yeah, but he's older now. Like,
Yeah,
you know what I
no,
mean?
I get it.
Like, he does look like he's in shape finally, which is great.
I get it.
Well, like, I don't know. When's the last time anybody was like, yeah, Zeke Elliott, he's a number one back. Let's do it.
So
Just because he's wearing 15 again doesn't mean he's at Ohio State.
it would be just excuse me. It'd be a borderline travesty to bury Bryce Young.
I know, but he's got to get out though.
Listen, I've seen this.
But he's got to get out.
I've seen Rosen. I've seen David Carr.
Yeah.
David
Carr was ruined. Like, you cannot convince me
So
David
how do
Carr
we
couldn't
feel
have been
about-
good other places.
BYU. What's his buckets in Denver?
Oh, Bo Nix? Or no, Zach Wilson.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was never super sold on him coming out.
Zach who?
So I felt differently about him coming out than I did Bryce Young.
So is Anthony Richardson, is it Steichen's problem? Because we once upon a time we really liked Steichen.
I never really liked Richardson though.
I don't even recognize what we're doing.
That was a guy that all along I've been like, okay, he hasn't played that much football, and when he has played football, like, I have a lot of questions about him actually throwing a football.
Whoa.
And the numbers have backed that up at
What's up,
pretty
Coach?
much every turn.
We know what the N on our helmet stands for. We understand that completely.
I
Knowledge.
don't understand what these drops are, Shane.
You don't understand?
I don't understand how they are relevant to what we're doing at all.
And that's totally on me.
Ravi's a little feisty.
I'm just like, sometimes they're on point and I get them and I'm like, I don't know what we're doing here.
I am not
You
going to
talking to a ghost?
read you Rev's tweet.
What did Rev say?
Rev Tom said, geez, do I even do this, Shade? I don't think I'm going
Go
to.
for it. You already started. Let's go.
Okay. Geez. Robbie sure is angry for a dude that's done real radio for like a year. I'm moving on from that. So, like, do we think that I'm trying to associate the quarterback with the coach or the OC?
Mhm.
And I always say this because I think he was spot on. I always go back to what Sage Rosenfeld said, that we never talk about that relationship. Just like we heard Sirianni yesterday say, if you guys are trying to drum up something, yeah, Kellen Moore called that play. No, Nick. Like, nobody was trying to drum up anything. You did that as you rolled your OC. Like, and he goes, "Oh, I'm the head coach."
It's like, hold on, that bus is coming. Let me get you here, Kellen.
I'm like, "Oh, Nick, this
It's getting away from him.
This may not go well.
This thing is getting away from him. It feels like.
So, but can I not? Do I have to look at Jalen Hurts in relation to Kellen Moore? Do I have to look at Herbert in relationship to Jim Harbaugh?
I think you have to consider it, right? The issue with Jalen Hurts is you've seen him look different under different coordinators, right?
Yeah, but you don't even.
No, but
you're not a Hurts guy.
I'm not, but I can also I don't.
But he's done it before. He played at Oklahoma and Alabama and could function.
Which is funny because when he was at Oklahoma, I was a Hurts guy. I thought people were too hard on him. I was like, I think he's better than you think he is. I thought it was kind of silly that nobody was talking about him as a first round draft pick. I was like, I think he's better than some of these other guys. I was coming out. I was in on Hurts,
but we like Steichen.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, he's
good.
He's got a good track record.
Yeah, but I never liked Anthony Richardson. My issue with Jalen Hurts is, and this is kind of goes to your point, or say Rosenfeld's point about the coordinator relationship, is we've seen Hurts look better in different situations than he does now. So that would kind of go to your point. My thing with Hurts isn't that I think he's bad.
Kyler's lost his guy, and he appears to be flourishing.
I think Kyler's also one of the most talented quarterbacks in the league. He's just short.
Did you say that out loud?
He is. Have you he's incredible.
You were getting ready to ask me if I've seen Kyler. I'm a closet one of his biggest fans.
Yeah, it's man crush. The only knock
I wanted to fire his own agent.
Even though
he did get him paid.
He did get him paid, but
some weird clauses in there, but he got him paid.
There was. Prior to that contract, the only knock on Kyler Murray was ever that he's short. That's it. He's got everything else you would want out of a quarterback.
I don't believe that to be the case.
Prior to the contract. I don't know who was knocking his skill set before, except for he's short. Now then the contract thing comes out and you're like, oh, does he not watch tape? Is he a little Johnny Manziel out there? He doesn't like to study. He's got 0 hours logged on the iPad. I don't know. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. But maybe getting a new OC is actually the best thing for Kyler because he does feel like he has to watch tape now. Maybe he does feel like he has to do the homework now. Maybe being with Cliff Kingsbury was like, oh, I know what this guy does. I'm good.
Let me ask it a different way.
Okay.
How many quarterbacks do you think in the league are good enough to withstand whomever is their OC?
Not very many.
Okay, so maybe that's the issue.
I'm not just talking about in the league right now. I mean historically. I can make the argument, and I think pretty easily, that Tom Brady's not Tom Brady if he ends up in a different situation.
No, I don't. But he's won Super Bowls. Why would you pick him?
Because he won the extra Super Bowl when after he had became who he became. There's a chance. I'm not saying his talent's any different, but I'm saying his opportunities would be different. I don't know. Patrick Mahomes is a really great example too. Nobody's arguing about Patrick Mahomes' skill set. What does he look like if he isn't with Andy Reid, who's really, really good at this? What does he look like if he doesn't sit for a year and with a guy in Alex Smith, who we know is great at being a professional and bringing other young quarterbacks along? I'm not saying he's bad, but is he Patrick Mahomes? I don't know. None of us were enamored with him coming out of Texas Tech. They're like, yeah, great arm talent and stuff, but I don't really know what he is.
I don't know.
Tom Brady very easily could have been.
I probably wouldn't have picked Brady, but I could be talked off of that.
Look at the way his career started. Once you get to years 5, 6, 7, Brady, we're talking about a different guy. But look at the way his career started. He very easily could have been an afterthought in the NFL.
So so wait, I just want to hear you correct. So if you're saying if they turned him loose and said, hey, go utilize your arm to win us championships, it may not have gone that way.
100%.
But because
of the way he was brought along.
Like Roethlisberger.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll entertain that.
Like, and Roethlisberger's another great example. Does he win 2 Super Bowls if he goes somewhere else and is like thrown to the wolves, or with a bad franchise? Like, the Steelers are an exemplary franchise. However you feel about them, they're run as well as anybody in the league and have been forever. Right? If Roethlisberger goes to a different franchise, and we know
I vouch for Ben and struggled when he was with Arians, even though you could make the case statistically that
was his best offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Like,
but I wanted him to run the ball.
But I'm talking about, and I have the utmost reverence for both Brady and Mahomes, less so for Roethlisberger. That's for you, amazing Daniel. He fights with me about Roethlisberger all the time. But like, I have the utmost respect, and like those are the, in my opinion, the 2 best quarterbacks that have ever played. But I can make an argument that situationally, they were in really good. I mean, Joe Montana is another great example. Is Joe Montana if he doesn't go to the 49ers and Bill Walsh? Like, we're talking about the greatest quarterback.
Is this the guy that led the comeback against Houston in the bowl game at Notre Dame? Maybe,
but maybe not. We don't. That's what I mean. Like, there's not very many guys. The one guy that I point to, because I don't think he went to a great situation, is Peyton Manning. He didn't go to a great situation, and he was thrown to the wolves. And then he ended up still being Peyton Manning.
Well, then I think Aikman belongs in that discussion.
Sure. And I'm not a huge Aikman guy, but that's a fair point. He was in a really tough situation.
And he had to overcome it emotionally.
Absolutely.
Like, he was getting his tail whipped.
What were they, 1-15 his first year?
Yeah.
They were terrible, right? That's a guy that overcame a pretty rough situation.
Like, and I hate saying this,
although I do think the franchise by the time he got there was an okay
But
shape.
I'm just saying, though, I think he is this is going to be a total hot take because people love to hate on him.
Mm-hmm.
Aikman should probably get more credit than he deserves, not less. And I realize he played with really good players up front, right?
Yeah.
He had Emmett, he had Irvin.
Great offensive line.
But not only did he have to overcome
early
the car treatment, he also evolved into this leader post Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah.
Which is legendary.
And got them that extra Super Bowl.
Yeah. Right?
Like,
where
he probably gets more
the
credit.
whole Like, I think he's grossly undervalued for what he meant in that locker room.
That's
I do,
interesting.
man. I do.
I think he might be a little overrated as a passer, but as a player, maybe not. And as a leader.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's a good example because he did overcome a pretty rough situation.
Yeah.
That's DB. I'm Ravi. We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla, and it's time for Bet On It, brought to you by Warhorse Sportsbook. Warhorse, the best place in Nebraska to place your sports bets, whether it's in the sportsbook in Lincoln or the one in Omaha. They've got you covered with nearly every major sporting event, as well as nearly every way you can think about betting on a game, live, in-game, props, straight bets, parlays, whatever you can think of, they've got you covered. Go to warhorsecasino.com for more info and to see all sorts of events they've got going on. I try and keep you updated when they're coming, but if you want to see a larger list, get to warhorsecasino.com. Wanted to continue our conversation about the quarterbacks here for a second.
You want to bet on it?
Yeah, I would like to bet on it because there's not a lot of guys that I would bet on as being successful regardless of their situation.
So I just think the only reason I got into this is because Sam Darnold had one of the highest grades coming out of any quarterback almost since Peyton Manning.
As a prospect, he was incredible.
Right? But for whatever the reason, it's whatever the reason.
The Jets, that's the reason.
So it just got me, you know.
I mean,
I'm higher on Kirk Cousins than most. Like, there's just quarterbacks that I gravitate towards it.
What situation did Kirk Cousins go into? Didn't have to play right away.
No.
Was with a.
I'm trying to remember his talent.
Oh yeah, I don't remember how he was graded, but I'm talking about his situation in the NFL. So didn't have to play right away because they had RG3. They was in the same draft class. And who was his offensive coordinator there? Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah.
Pretty good offensive mind to be with, right?
Yeah.
So Kirk Cousins, I don't know. I don't remember what his eval was. I think they looked at him as a career backup probably based on where they drafted him. But in a really good situation where didn't have to play right away, got to learn, got to sit, and was with a really good offensive coordinator. Kirk Cousins was in a really good position to be successful. And that, I think, can launch your career.
I don't know if that's a hot take, but I'm not sure I disagree. Did Patrick Mahomes bit fortunate being with Andy Reid?
Yes, 100%. Can you imagine him with the Bears? Can you imagine him with the Bears?
I get it. But there are some guys that are really good.
Yeah.
That I think are totally situational.
Like Brock Purdy.
Lamar Jackson.
Lamar Jackson's even better. Yeah, I mean, multiple MVP.
I think Lamar Jackson is particular.
You have to be very specific with what you ask him to do.
I'm going to give you one.
Yeah.
And this may be a hot take.
Okay.
I think he's better than we think, and I think he's darn near thrived, if not at minimum come out of the back end of some weird situations.
Who?
Baker Mayfield.
Ooh, that's a good one. He's been in some terrible spots, terrible situations. I mean, obviously the Browns are the Browns, right? But even if you want to go as far as
there was a time,
yeah,
when the second to last year in Cleveland, we thought he was going to be pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, we thought he was going to be pretty good pretty early in Cleveland.
So I think Baker Mayfield is
he's been good in Tampa.
Is better than. How about how he made the little mini run for a terrible Rams team?
See, that's what I was going to bring up as maybe the most impressive thing about him not being situationally
roster,
dependent.
At
Not
that
just
time, that was junk.
He played on like being on the team for 2 days.
Oh, I know.
That's unbelievable.
No, I know.
It's what we freaked out when Christian McCaffrey did it for the 49ers. That's a running back.
It's early for this guy, but I'm tempted.
Okay.
What about CJ Stroud?
See, that's a guy I think about a lot because we thought that situation was horrifying when he got drafted there. I thought it was horrifying when DeMeco Ryans went to coach there.
I did too.
Everybody did. We were like, that's one of the worst situations.
He's pretty good.
That's a guy that, like, out of this group of young guys right now, if there's a guy that's not situationally dependent, I would point to CJ Stroud.
I think Kyler Murray is in that group. He lost his stud.
Yeah. Kyler Murray's interesting. He's hard to.
I guess it's still early, but he's pretty good.
He is pretty good. He's hard to figure out though because we've seen kind of so many different versions of him. It feels like.
Let me give you one.
Okay.
Joe Burrow.
Joe Burrow's tough. Do we think he went to a good situation in Cincinnati?
Remember, Joe Burrow is the guy that we said under 25 lock stock was the guy we'd take. That wasn't named Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, that's my guy. Like right now, health is obviously a concern, but out of the guys that
is it still?
Yeah.
Okay.
Health is still my only concern with Joe Burrow. I think he's incredible, but I don't know I can't definitively say he'd be successful anywhere. I lean towards yes because I don't think we were enamored with that Cincinnati situation when he went there. We like Zach Taylor now, but I don't know that we loved his situation. And if you know anything about the way he thinks and the way he processes, like that feels like a guy to me that's going to figure it out.
Is 34 and 14 good? Touchdowns, interceptions.
Yeah.
Is it good? Is it really good?
I would say it's good. It's a little high on the interceptions that I'd like, but it's good. It's more than a 2-to-1 ratio.
So his two best years were 34 and 14 and 35 and 12.
Yeah. I mean, 2.5 to 1 to close to 3 to 1 is.
When you look at those numbers, are you like, ooh?
I wish
top upper echelon, like lock that guy up.
Not based on numbers.
Anybody
alone.
Not named Patrick Mahomes, I'm taking.
Not based on numbers alone, no. Based on how I see him play, yes.
It's
eyeballs for me on Burrow.
Yeah, because I'm not going to give that much pushback.
Like if you just give me the numbers,
but I listen to guys like Canty sell their stock on Burrow.
My only concern on
this was just the other day.
My only concern on Burrow's health. If he can stay healthy, I still think he's exactly who I think he is.
Because we don't think Burrow was better than Brady at LSU. But do we think Burrow is better than Zach Taylor in Cincinnati?
Maybe he was better than Brady at LSU. Like, what's Brady done since then?
Oh, believe me.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, maybe we were wrong at LSU.
They had to get rid of him in Carolina.
Yeah. Like, maybe we were, and that was a coup of a hire when they got him. Everybody wanted Joe Brady.
But you could have thrown Chase and Jefferson. And
Yeah, I mean, he had really good weapons at LSU too. I get that. But now you look at it, okay, maybe we were wrong on Brady. And what did we think of Zach Taylor before Joe Burrow?
Not much. Well, see, Zach, the Bengals should have played better down the stretch just last week than they did.
Mhm.
So, I mean, there was some in-game there.
I think you can make the argument that Joe Burrow, if healthy, is a guy that transcends situation.
Okay. And I'm probably not. He comes to mind.
But that's a mental thing, not his physical. He's good physically.
He does come to mind, but I am concerned about him. But you know what? I do think he can. I do think he can overcome his situation.
Yeah, I do too. Because when has Cincinnati
isn't
ever
that weird?
When has Cincinnati ever not been a dumpster fire? You gotta go back 30 years minimum. Like Cincinnati's not a good franchise. It never has been. But all of a sudden, Joe Burrow's there, and we're like, oh, Cincinnati.
Let me give you another one.
Yeah,
because I vouch for this guy too. Matt Stafford.
I think he does transcend situation.
Me too.
Because getting Detroit to playoffs, to multiple postseasons, is a miracle. Like that franchise is better now because they got the head coach right. They put it together a pretty good roster. Like they figured things out. But when Stafford was there, like it was Stafford. Calvin Johnson.
I always kind of, my general rule of thumb.
Didn't he get Jim Caldwell to a playoffs?
Yeah. Like, my general rule of thumb is, can you talk about a quarterback without their head coach?
Yeah. Yeah, I think Stafford applies there.
I think Troy Aikman applies. I think Baker Mayfield applies. I think Kyler Murray applies. Why don't I think Brady and Mahomes do, even though they're the poster children for great quarterbacks?
And they're the best of that group in terms of play and you could argue talent, and maybe not talent with Brady. I think Brady's a good talent. He's not a
I think Mahomes is clearly the best player in the NFL.
Oh God, it's not close. I don't think it's close. If you would trade,
but I still associate him a little bit with Andy Reid.
100%. 100%. Patrick Mahomes, will never know because it played out the way it played out. But
it may not be important because
there's a reason.
He's so good. Mahomes is so good when he needs to be. I think we forget about what the play call was, what the scheme. And I literally just last week.
But guess who didn't win?
Watch Kansas City run 6 different plays.
I know.
Out of the same formation.
But guess who didn't win much at Texas Tech?
No, I know.
Like
that could be a talent thing too.
It could be.
Like that might be one or two things can be true at once. Right, because Reed's really, really, really good. Right, he still has Michael Vick as the
best coaching job I've ever seen.
Vick's is mic drop.
100%.
Right, that's post pen.
100%. I mean, we'll never know if Patrick Mahomes could be. If you tell me he could be, I'm not going to fight you on it. But I also think Andy Reid is a huge part of why we think Patrick Mahomes is who he is today. I don't know what we're going to bet on, but I can bet on situation matters for quarterback. I know that.
I can bet on the fact if he has the ball last year, losing.
Yeah, I know. Twice now.
I do know that.
Twice now. Coming up next, we'll wrap up the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Wrapping up the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. We've got a Woj bomb of sorts. He's retiring.
Yeah.
From the news industry and from ESPN. Although it does seem like he's still going to work. Pete Thamel is reporting he will be the general manager of the men's basketball program at St. Bonaventure. I think that's real. I don't think I'm being fooled by the internet.
Like Tua retiring, or
it's hard to say, but it looks like the real Pete Thamel. So he no more Woj bombs for your boy.
We won't even know what to do.
I guess we'll have to follow Shams, I guess.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
I was always a Woj over Shams guy myself, but
as are most sane people.
That's crazy. That's sorry.
Not that I'm referring to you as sane, because that has yet to be proven.
It's much like Patrick Mahomes, whether he's situational or not.
I do like Tony's point though.
We may never know. What's that?
Well, TG said because when you get the great combination between quarterbacks and coach, that's when it transcends.
Yeah, it elevates to another level, right?
Yeah. And I asked, can you think about Peyton Manning without thinking about Tom Moore?
I can.
You didn't even know Tom Moore, did you?
Once you said it, I did, but it wouldn't have come to me.
So Peyton Manning was a standalone?
Yeah, for me.
Omaha.
Yeah.
No,
To
you
me,
go
Peyton
here,
Manning
you go
is
here, you go.
like if
Yeah.
if Patrick Mahomes doesn't go to Andy Reid, is he just Phillip Rivers?
I don't know, man, but I don't appreciate the Phillips Rivers.
Oh, he's
blasphemy.
good. No, Phillip Rivers is good, but we don't talk about him like he's Patrick Mahomes.
No, I know.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's why Phillip Rivers is the perfect example. He's really good.
Yeah.
He's just not somebody you're going to talk about as an all-timer. Like, yeah, I agree. The combination is what lifts people from.
So you know what's funny?
Yeah.
I feel like this is the backdoor way that I was trying to describe Coach Rule and Coach Sat on the offensive side of the ball by getting Dylan Raiola.
Oh, interesting.
Right? Because every time I try to talk about the prowess, I use Raiola as in that offense, in the concepts, as a way to validate.
But then they're like, oh, just Raiola's really good.
Yeah.
That's what that's what people that don't like Satterfield say. It's like, oh, well, anybody could do it with Raiola.
Yeah.
That's like, well, that's actually not true.
It's really not.
Like we've seen a lot of really talented quarterbacks in bad situations not do well. We were just talking about.
And that's not to say, because I won't know. That's not to say Dylan couldn't overcome.
100%. He could be one of the guys that is not situationally dependent.
Well, yeah, that part. We're not sure yet.
Also, don't know because I think offensive coordinators can be situationally dependent.
Although, if the offense doesn't turn out to what we want it to be, I mean, we'll probably be able to see why.
Yeah, probably.
Won't it reveal itself?
One way or another. Yeah. You'll either sit there and
I don't even know if we're prepared for that.
Oh, we are certainly not.
Not emotionally.
Not even a little bit.
Because we don't want to say anything negative about the quarterback play. It's much easier to be negative about the OC.
Because we've fired and hired different OCs before. We've never had a 5-star quarterback.
Yeah. Drew said something I think is exceptional. He admits that he's a novice in football. But he asks good questions. I talk about running behind your pads as we'll get ready to preview Illinois tomorrow and Friday. And he said, DB, I heard you a couple of times say this week that the running back for Illinois doesn't run behind his pads like you and I's backs do. He says, I'm an absolute layman to running back play. Would you say it's kind of the way that Amani Cross used to run? I always felt like he was a big guy viewed as a big back, but never ran that heavy. You and I backs always fell forward. So this guy you think we can keep from getting that leaky yardage. Love the show, Brockhead. Okay. So, yes, Amani Cross
good example.
Drew, that is a beautiful example.
Big back. Didn't feel like he ran particularly heavy.
You want another example that Coach Barthel has kind of gotten out of him? Gabe Ervin was a guy
didn't used to run
didn't always run behind his pads.
Yeah. Dante Dowdell runs behind his pads.
But now, and even Dowdell has changed the way that he
runs super hard now.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Who's a guy? Let's go the other way because it's true the opposite way too, right? Like you can have little guys that run heavy. Like who's an example of that?
Alvin Kamara.
Okay. Yeah.
Kamara is constantly falling forward.
Yeah, but not a big guy.
Not a big guy. No, not a big guy at all. A little guy that runs heavy. Clinton Portis was like that.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one. I never thought of him as a big back.
Oh, Clinton Portis.
Yeah.
And surprisingly, even though he's big, he's a little bit bigger than we think. I like the way Marcus Allen ran like a bigger back.
He was tall. He wasn't real big.
No, he was slight.
He was pretty lean.
Constantly going forward.
Yeah.
He was a great inside runner.
Yeah.
Arguably one of the best of all time.
You know who was a better inside runner than I think gets credit for?
And the best at going over the pile.
Yeah, he does have the iconic photos of him diving. Probably not a real heavy runner, but a better inside runner than we remember was Warwick Dunn.
Yeah, he's a great inside runner.
For being a little back.
Warwick Dunn actually fits kind of what I'm talking about.
Yeah?
Yeah. Warwick Dunn
gets
was
downhill.
Constantly getting downhill.
Yeah. Not super heavy, but he got downhill.
I'm a huge Warwick Dunn fan.
His style of running is to do what he did at his size is unbelievable.
Yeah, I think he's incredible.
Pretty underrated.
I think Warwick Dunn is incredible.
Yeah, I was a big fan.
That's why I like Emmett so much. Like if you stand next to Emmett, go down on the
Johnson.
early.
Yeah.
He's not a big guy.
No. I mean, he's pretty thick,
But,
but he's
does
not.
he run like a big guy though?
Emmett runs like a big guy. I thought Anthony Grant ran like a big guy.
And I think we thought he was bigger than he was
Yeah, but
because
he's
of how
not.
he ran,
And he's not.
right?
Yeah.
What about Amir? He
Not
got downhill, but he wasn't heavy.
No, it wasn't what I would call a heavy runner. Like he wasn't a pile mover.
But he got up.
Yeah.
Like he got up the field.
No, I thought he played to his strengths. I think Amir's best attributes were
You like the
was-
way he cut, right?
he was efficient.
Yeah.
He was an efficient runner. Like not a lot of wasted.
Right. One cut go.
Yeah. He was very, very efficient.
That's underrated.
Yeah. We got into these
You get a lot of wasted movement with a lot of running backs.
yeah, and this I don't it's early. I don't know if I'm ready to say like running is coming back.
Mhm.
But statistically speaking, in the first couple of weeks, it looks like running is
Well, so
coming
this is
back. And
this is the adjustment,
college and the NFL.
This is the adjustment, right? Because what did we say earlier about the defenses in the NFL?
Yeah, so they're getting lighter, putting smaller guys on
They're
the
getting
field,
better about
playing
defending the passes,
playing like
right?
big nickels,
They're putting in-
dimes.
They're disguising coverages, and
You have to find a way to take advantage of Derwin James being on the field if you don't think he can
Yeah.
tackle.
in order to do that, you have to give up something else, right? And they're like, oh, teams aren't willing to run the ball anymore. And John Harbaugh's like, hold my milk. Yes, I am. Like, let's do this.
Yeah, that sneaky little 1-2 punch he's got going with
Edwards
Dobbins and Gus.
Not guys that you would look at and be like, oh, great backs.
Yeah, but I mean, JK pre-injury, I was
Jake, a lot of people,
I like JK.
a lot of people were high on JK, but they forgot about him.
Hopefully, the Ravens gave up on him too early.
On both of them.
You know, yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
really,
good call.
like,
Yeah, that's why.
maybe old John was doing Jim a couple favors there.
So if you're Nebraska, if you're thinking about this, like the quarterback from the OC and the coach, because it seems like Coach Rule is more involved offensively, right? Do you get that, or am I planning that?
No,
seed
I
in
think
here?
that's right, because I think maybe I'm not being fair here either. I think he's like, Tony's got this.
So. There's only one position I've ever heard him openly say he's not good with.
What's that?
What would you guess?
Well, I know he likes working with the defensive line.
Okay, so you
So
don't
that's
think
not
it's-
them.
Okay.
I mean, off the top of my head, he played linebacker, so I'm going to guess not them. I would guess defensive backs.
Correct. That's not what I would have guessed. We were just talking about the plan going for. He's
Yeah.
like, listen, I'm not. And it's the first time I've ever
We like self-awareness, though,
yeah.
which maybe that's why he was so willing to let Tony White be so involved in the hiring process of John Butler. Be like, hey, you know this stuff better than I do.
Which is also a reason why I think he's going to let Sat play out. That's why I hate the talk of, because this kind of crept up the last couple of weeks. Right,
Mm-hmm.
it's like Sat's going to be Coach Rule's Cosgrove. I'm like, you guys are on crack. Like, there's no way.
Mm-mm.
He won't nip that in the bud if he thinks it's an issue, because he's responsible.
Yeah.
And he's going to let you know that he's responsible.
Yeah.
Right? Like I told you, I thought it was a backhanded compliment, but it turns out to really be a compliment when he's like, I've demoted him before.
Mhm.
He's a loyal guy. Like, he rides for the brand. We
Yeah.
need guys that ride for the brand, and then we get better. I've taken this guy with me to this job, or this guy with me to this job, or I didn't take this guy with me to this job. So I like to think that he would just sit idly by and not empower guys to be who he thinks they are, partly because he wants to be validated.
Yeah.
Is ludicrous.
Can I make the argument that let's say there's some truth to what people say. Let's say Sat's like, if 100% is, I don't know, who's a college offensive coordinator or play caller you like a lot? Chip Kelly.
Okay.
Historically, Chip Kelly's been a really
Hey,
good
you
offensive
see how they're
coordinator.
running the ball?
Yeah. So let's say Chip Kelly's 100%. Let's say normal offensive coordinator is 80%. If Sat's a 70, but Rule says, hey, his value to the brand and his loyalty is worth more to me than an 85 that's going to be gone
Or
in 2 years.
consistency. Let's call it consistency.
Yeah, consistency. But his consistency is more valuable to me because I think I can help him get to an 80.
Yeah.
Versus a guy that's an 85 that's just trying to get a different job.
He would do that.
Like, can I make that argument that that's worth it?
He would definitely do that. Yeah, you could, because I think that's what would happen if that played out that way.
Because what has he talked about with consistency and guys getting old? You don't think that applies to his coaching staff too?
He's already thinking ahead.
We'll be back tomorrow. We'll start previewing Illinois and get you ready